Good evening mga ka-3 PM. Narito po akong muli. Si Peter Serrano para sa Ano Pilipinas? Attitude ba? An original program brought to you by Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, Pilipinas muna. Ito pong mga nakaraang araw, linggo, buwan, iba-iba ang ating nakikita, iba-iba ang ating naririnig. At lahat ito nangyayari ngayon sa social media. Because as what we have been saying, hindi na tayo binibigyan ng magandang serbisyo ng ating mainstream media. And the mainstream media has become, kumbaga they neglect na their integrity has been compromised because of their biases. At alam naman nating lahat yan. Hindi naman na yan sikreto. That's why the mainstream media now is beginning to attack the social media. Tayo na yung parang nagiging kontrabida sa kanila because here in the social media, nalalaman natin ang totoo. Nakikita natin kung ano talaga ang nilalaman ng puso ng mas maraming tao. Dito ngayon nagkangampanya ang ating mga kandidato. Dito na ngayon nangungumbinsi ang lahat ng mga produkto tungkol sa kung gaano man kaganda ang kanilang nilalabas na products or what. Kung baga, ang social media ngayon ay ang kaisa-isang source of correct information. Malungkot lang na ang fact-checker natin sa Facebook ay Rappler at Verifiles. At alam naman natin kung anong klaseng mga kumpanya yung mga yan. At alam naman natin kung anong klaseng mga tao ang naririyan. Na hindi rin, mga ano din bulok din ng mga dignidad. Hindi rin natin maaasahan sa kung ano pa man ang dapat ibigay sa atin. Because mainstream media, as we have been saying here, pinabayaan na tayo. Kung ano na lang ang gusto nila, yun na lang ang nilalabas nila. At alam naman natin, since 2016, kaya naglabasan ang mga kagaya namin is because we somehow want to have our voices heard. Because nga, kinalimutan na tayo ng mainstream media. And ang kasama natin ngayong gabi ay ang isa sa may pinakamalakas na boses sa mainstream media. Isa sa pinakakilala natin na pinaghuhugutan natin ng mga impormasyon kapag hindi natin nakukuha sa mainstream media or sa kahit na anumang information platforms. Huwag na nating patagalin ang gabing ito. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on Pilipinas muna, Attorney Trixie Cruz-Angeles.
Hi, magandang gabi. I hope you can hear me. So, magandang gabi. Welcome to, welcome. Hi, nakalimutan ko, hindi ako yung host. Guest
It's
pala
okay.
ako ngayon.
It's okay, attorney. You can have this show also.
Sorry. Magandang gabi sa lahat na nakikinig. Hindi nasanay ako, nag interview ako. Hindi ako
Oo.
sanay na ako yung interview subject. Sorry. Pero magandang gabi.
It's
Thank you for
okay. It's
having
okay,
me
attorney.
as usual.
And it's our honor, attorney. It's your second time and yung first time natin, it was really isa ka sa nagpakilala sa amin, attorney, ha?
Ay,
Nung
gano'n? Well, I'm
nagsisimula
happy to.
kami, yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
and we're very glad to have you again
uh,
because alam naman namang matindi ang usapan natin ngayon dahil sa mga nangyayari around us. Attorney, kamusta
yeah.
ka? Kamusta ang mga nakaraan mong mga linggo?
Tumataba. The pandemic is catching up on me. Kumbaga, hindi ako ganun tumaba during the pandemic. Pero parang humabol na lang ako the past few months. So, there's like, I think about 10, 15 pounds on me that doesn't really belong here. Hindi ko alam kung saan ko ilalagay. So,
Okay
other
lang yan,
than that, I'm
attorney.
good. Same as usual. Well,
Attorney, itong mga
medyo
nakaraang
maingay.
araw natin na medyo
Yan.
matitindi talaga ang mga nagaganap. Nakikita ko naman ang iyong mga post at saka ang iyong mga taga-subaybay. Talaga nakatutok din sa'yo dahil libo-libo naman na nagko-comment sa'yo. Libo-libo ang nagre-react sa mga post mo. Itong mga nakaraang araw, mga attorney, marami ang naging intriga na
Oh,
lumabas.
yeah.
Marami ang hindi natin maintindihan kung bakit ginagawa na parang ginagawa tayong mga tanga. Because as we say, ito nga sa title ng episode natin ngayong gabi is maneuvering the narrative. Kasi
Yan.
saan na namin hahanapin ang katotohanan ba? Kasi nga, parang ang lakas-lakasan ng loob nila to tell a lie. At parang walang ibang nakatingin sa kanila. Attorney, itong nangyayaring ganito sa mga, okay, wag na tayong magplastikan pa. Lalo na sa kampo ni Lenny. Sa
Yeah,
kampo ni
okay,
Lenny.
sige.
Paano, attorney, ano reading mo sa ginagawa ng mga tao niya sa kanyang mga sortie, sa kanyang kampanya?
Well, for me, no, they're just waging what they would normally wage during a campaign. Kung i-compare mo the way they have managed it, let's say, compare mo dun sa campaign ni Noy Noy in 2016, 2013. Right? No, sorry,
2010.
2010. Sorry, 2010. Nagra-rap siya. There was, it was just all over again the narrative of his parents. There's no indication whatsoever. There was very little talk about his own accomplishments. It was just dragging out the 86 narrative, the he's so kawawa, his father was assassinated, and so on. Something that Chris, his sister, echoed later on that you guys owe your freedom to us. Yung parang ganon. Only that it was said in campaign terms, meaning they're trying to make us feel good about voting for him. But the complete avoidance of his lack of qualifications, lack of experience, zero or very little achievements in his stint as congressman and as senator, and the fact that Cory campaigned for him and worried about him so much because she was concerned about his future. You know, she was getting on and he
Mm-hmm.
didn't to have a career at that point. So a lot of that was glossed over. There was very little talk about an actual platform, and he did not participate in debates. Something that seems
At
very
all.
important for them now, di ba? Not at all. So they're doing the same thing now, only ramped up because they have much more to lose. Right now, it's their survival. In fact, although Lenny herself denies it, she says she's running as an independent, but I mean, it's clearly BS because her running mate is liberal, her campaign manager is liberal, Bam Aquino, and she just portrays herself as an independent. My guess is to cover up for the fact that she was unable to unite the opposition. If she ran
Mm.
as liberal, she would not be able to manage getting yung stray votes of people who don't like the Liberal Party. So it's all you can see the the how do you call this, the mental dishonesty here. The fudging over the fact that she's an independent, fudging over the fact that they had this grand ambition of uniting the opposition, and it was an abject and utter failure. To this day, nobody really calls her out for that, but she must be reminded. And then this portrayal of hugely successful rallies comes at the
Mhm.
heel of the first hugely successful proclamation rally, which was BBM's, and with a crowd of something like what, 25,000 people, and I was there. Um,
We were there
it,
also, kami ng 3 p.m.
Yay!
Attorney.
Nagkita. Oo. Sayang di tayo nagkita.
Yeah.
Ano, just so many people. It was crazy. So, and then they're playing catch up, but trying to make it look like they're not. So there's
Mhm.
so much, so much for them kasi I don't think that they really even see it as dishonesty. Parang ano lang sa kanila, kampanya eh. So, it's campaign language, it's campaign dishonesty. Promise the world anyway, you don't have to fulfill it once you're in office. Magkakalimutan na lang. So there's that. And then you remember how she backtracked at first saying that she would suspend some of the
Ay,
infrastructure programs, projects. And then later on, backtracks and says, no, 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 no naman, titignan lang natin, re-reviewin lang natin, yada, yada.
yeah,
But we know that she wants to stop the build, 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 the most
yeah.
successful program of the Duterte administration. So, a lot of this language is just a continuation of what they have always been used to. So it's kumbaga par for the course, except that they're a little more desperate now, and so their little lies are bigger lies now. Not I don't see really much change. The character is still the same. The Liberal Party remains the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it remains the same. Yan nga po, attorney, ang pinagtataka ko dahil
Mm.
marami akong kilala yung ibang tao pa talaga malalapit sa akin na naniniwala talaga sila, attorney, sa
We're
sinasabi
true
nitong,
believers.
I know,
Uh,
sinasabi nitong kampo ni Lene Robredo, and they even
mm.
believe that she is intelligent. Na ako talaga yung, at pinalalabas nila na si BBM ang bobo. Ah,
That's nuts. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
just nuts.
Pero attorney,
Kasi
mhm.
yeah, they rely on standards, on presumptions. The world is run by presumptions. But for example, she has a law degree. She graduated with a degree in economics in UP. The presumption is, oh, she's intelligent. Parang ganon.
Mhm.
And so, in order to make BBM look unintelligent, they have to attack his undergraduate degree, say that he's an undergrad, while at the same time ignoring the stint at Wharton, which he would not have gotten into had he not graduated from a degree course in
I
college.
know.
Di ba? And so on. And, dismissive. Generally, their tone about PBM is always dismissive. And, big lie. Alam mo yun, the Goebbels approach. Big lie, repeat it often. Magnanakaw, magnanakaw, magnanakaw. But there is no criminal record. And to be fair, also the Cory administration never really even filed an actual criminal case. Or well, even if they did, nothing prospered. And the primary reason why no criminal cases were filed at the outset was because they didn't want the Marcoses to come home. The Aquino administration felt unstable, so bringing home the Marcoses might have led to a period of instability and possibly a re-overthrow, another regime change, unscheduled regime change. Similar to what they did. Kumbaga, baka makarma sila pag inuwi yung mga Marcoses, and therefore, it was better to just file civil cases para hindi sila required, or they could find another way of giving notices to them. So
Mhm.
there was that. So, but
So,
the rhetoric hasn't changed.
yeah, attorney, ito, sa pagbabalik ng mga Marcos, kasi yung mga nakakilala ko na ayaw talaga sa pangalan na yan, ako attorney, sasabihin ko talaga ito sa'yo. I was a Marcos hater. I grew up hating the idea of their
Same,
name. Really,
same,
I
same.
did. So, but No, syempre
But
ito,
didn't we all? Di
didn't
ba
we
tayo
all?
lahat?
Yeah. Yeah, didn't we all? Yeah.
Yeah.
So ngayon, attorney, meron
Uh,
ako mga kakilala ngayon, mga kabataan na tinatanong ako, what made you change your mind or your opinion on the family? And then I tell them, I read, and
yeah.
I reopened my mind to what was happening, to what happened. So yung ganun ko naman pinapaliwanag sa kanila. At sinasabi ko kasi sa mga kabataan na iba rin ang paniniwala. Attorney, I don't know, tell me if I am correct in doing this. I tell them, I am not here to convince you anymore what to believe, but you need to understand who you're supporting.
I agree. I agree.
'Di ba? Oh,
Yeah.
kasi, o sige, ayaw mo kay Marcos, gusto mo si Lenny?
Okay. Sorry.
Um,
But yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I wouldn't have put it that bluntly, but yeah. Sorry.
I mean,
No, kasi I treat
attorney,
them as two different. Sorry. Okay. But yeah, I
yeah,
agree with you with your stand there.
yeah. So, Tony, ito lang ang isang gusto kong iparating mo sa ating mga nakikinig, ano? Ikaw ba, nung na, sinabi mo nga lahat tayo, galit dati sa mga Marcoses, ayaw natin sa mga Marcoses. Attorney, saan ka nagkaroon ng reawakening? Para lang for the sake of the people who are listening to us, saan ka nagkaroon ng reawakening?
The truth, under Duterte. Really,
Mhm.
seriously. I had to, but of course it started, the doubt started in the Aquino regime administration, the second Aquino administration. I was diehard Cory. I was so upset. I was in the US during the 86 revolution. So I was not able to participate. I was studying, I was abroad. So medyo I felt that I was I I history was made. I wasn't there, parang ganon. And when I came home, I was very ultra supportive. My mother has links to the, to a lot of the opposition, what we call the Marcos opposition. You remember that they were referred to as the opposition. Um, they're very close family friends. My grandfather was chief of staff of Cornelio Villarreal in Congress before, so he also had the insider track. And as far as we understood, Marcos was the devil incarnate. So and
Mhm.
then when under the Noy Noy Aquino administration, it was like fail from the get go. The Truth Commission that he had promised us, and Executive Order Number One, all were unconstitutional. Parang from the start, it was like, wait a minute, you said you were going to lead us. Now you can't even put together an executive order that's constitutional. What have we done? Parang ganun, early on, the realization came to me that we put somebody really incompetent in the highest office in the land on the mere surname that he carried. So that was, rude awakening. Then I was, how do you call this? Definitely opposition during the time of Noy Noy. He actually, there was talk that he tried to have me arrested. But there's insider talk in Malacanang at the time. They had, they were very ambivalent about me. They disliked the way I was pointing out that the talks that Noy Noy was holding with, at the time, the spokesperson of the MILF, allowing MILF controlled territories, allowing the MILF to have uniforms of their combatants, and being okay with that, for me, were signs of the acknowledgement of what is called a belligerency. Now, a
Mm.
belligerency is a step up. No, it's on the road to recognition of a separate state. So a belligerency can obtain foreign funding without the condemnation that comes with it. It's not considered
Okay.
interference. It's not international interference. And I was the first to point that out during that time. So they were really angry at me that he actually sent an emissary to talk to me. And that emissary was a former professor at the UP who was arguing with me. But this was after the Albarca incident, where several of our special forces not SAFA, Special Forces. These are military who were serving a search warrant in Albarca and were gunned down and beheaded. So this
Oh.
was they were in the act of serving a search warrant, which is a state function. They were agents of the state, and this was the first time that the media acknowledged that there was now territory which were considered MILF held territory, which means that the president had ceded national soil, national territory to what would have amounted to an insurgency group. Under other circumstances, if the MILF then had been a separate state, Noynoy Aquino could be held for trial for treason. Unfortunately, it wasn't at that level, but he was already raising them to a level of belligerency. So very early on, I was asking these really difficult questions that they actually had to send somebody to talk to me. And that
Uh-huh.
person was a former UP professor who argued and argued with me. And then finally, when he couldn't convince me, I kept saying, no peace without justice. Di ba yun yung, that's, they wanted to continue the peace talks after so many of our officers and men had been beheaded by the very people that he wanted to have peace talks with. So this is what later on, if you will remember, this is what led to the No Peace Without Justice. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
So at the one of the members of the government peace panel is now Justice Marvic Leonen, who was also my professor at the College of Law. So and we talked about it, and he was telling me that we can't not have peace talks, and I was saying, but sir, how can you have peace when you cannot give justice? I mean, we all
Yes.
know the wrongness of this was pre-SAF, this was pre-SAP, pre-Mama Sapano, and this group also was the first group. It wasn't Mama Sapano, it wasn't the SAF 44. This was the first group that President Noynoy refused to receive when they were landing the bodies in Villamor Air Base. And the families were there. He arrived, but only to attend a conference with the AFP command. As he passed by the reporters, they tried to get a comment out of him. And you know what he said? Sabi niya, instead of saying that this was an unfortunate incident, he said, kasalanan ng AFP to. I never forgave him for that.
Oh
Kasalan.
my God.
The families heard that. The bodies were coming in. The families were surrounding him, asking, at least searching for comfort. And the one thing that he should not have said was what he said. Kasalanan ng AFP to. In other words, these dead people coming in, it's their fault. They're dead. And that's how sensitive the whole thing was, how sensitively handled. So very early on, I
Ah,
realized that it was a mistake to have made him president. But it
uh-huh,
was there.
uh-huh.
So, so dun pa lang, I started to think, if there's so much wrong with this person, could it be that they were also wrong so many years back? It was my first time to actually consider that there was a story other than what they fed us in 1986. First
Mm-hmm.
time yon. Yeah, later on, he was so angry at me. They were talking about having me arrested, but it never happened. They made the mistake of asking a friend of mine to look into it, and he was the one who said na, hindi kaibigan yan. So, a couple of years later, I became spokesman of the IBP, and it was the impeachment of Renato Corona. And then suddenly, friends na kami. Yeah, mga ganun na they were talking to me as if, di ba magkaibigan tayo, di ba magkakampi tayo and all that. And so I saw the hypocrisy of that whole thing. So it started there.
Okay.
So, di ba? Di ba? So wouldn't you
Yeah.
think twice? Wouldn't you, knowing all of that was going on, and knowing that there were these things that they were not doing. And do you know that they continued the peace talks even after nothing had been done to give justice to those officers? And as a matter of fact, those that survived, their commanding officers, not only were court-martialed, but they are now still undergoing trial with the Sandigan Bayan
For
for
what?
that. For well, for
For
leading
having
them
those
to declare,
soldiers.
yes,
Okay.
supposedly for giving the order to issue the warrant and to cross into what was then MILF held territory. I mean, I know after that we had peace talks and now we're all good with what used to be the MILF. But at the time, it was just unthinkable for me na how can you say that? How can you not be on the side of the officers and men who have just been beheaded? 'Di ba? In the service of a warrant of arrest because they were one of the Abu Sayyaf kidnappers was there and that was his warrant of arrest that they were serving. This is an act of state. They gunned down people in a legitimate act of the service of a warrant of arrest. And somehow they had to face the surviving officers, they faced court martial and and criminal cases in the Sandigan Bayan. They never changed that narrative. So that's
Oh
when I
my.
decided, no, wait, there's something horribly wrong here. And then, of course, it was one thing after the other. Yeah, MRT was another thing. One of my sons used to go to school in Makati and would take the train. Right? And, you know, in the end, sabi niya sa akin, I can't take the train. It's easier to catch a bus. But I still have to wait about an hour because people who used to take the train are now taking buses. And I went and saw for myself the 2 hour pila of people outside of the MRT. And there was just this
Yeah,
complete 'di
I
ba,
know.
indifference to it. Eh, parang
Yeah,
kasalanan pa ng mga tao that they had to take the train. And that's what I
yeah,
felt for most of the Aquino administration. Like everything that went wrong with government was somehow our fault. And maybe it
yes.
was. I felt that at some point, yeah, it's our fault. We let you be president. We let the student council, well, actually, it would be an insult to student councils to call the Aquino administration a student council. I've seen better run student councils, seriously. So, and then Duterte came, and it was the
Yeah,
first positive thing that I had heard in such a long time. So with Duterte, when we had friends talking to him before to convince him to run and all that, and he was saying all the right things. For me, it was if things don't work, then we must take drastic measures because if the problem is endemic, it is systemic and all of that, we must be brave. Kumbaga, do what we have to do. If we
mm-hmm.
have to, to do all of these things, then do what we have to do. And it was Duterte who was finally saying all of these things. And then he proposed the one thing that was unthinkable before, that what if we were wrong about 1986? What if, diba, what if it's the Marcoses who are victims of injustice, or even not even that, not for many people that's still an extreme. But what if we just put another group of people who wanted their turn? Baga, o sige, let's say that the Marcos administration wasn't lily white and clean, but that it had the usual things that we still see in government to this day. But we replaced them with people who were no better, and in many
Yeah,
ways worse, because
worse.
di ba, somehow I keep getting the feeling that they blame us for everything that's wrong. And how can that, di ba? O sige, yeah, fine, because we put you in office. And then you hear things like, buhay pa naman kayo, di ba? In such under appalling circumstances. And then you hear Mara Rojas saying, pati pa naman yung kasalanan ninyo, sagot pa ng gobyerno. Ay,
I know.
wait, what? You had senior citizens who were being arrested for laglag bala, and they felt no sympathy, no,
Yeah,
as if this whole thing was all our fault. Na parang sagabal tayo
yeah,
sa
yeah.
kanila. I
And
kept
that
getting
one nga
that
isa sa pinaka narinig ko na sinabi after sa 44 when Noynoy Aquino said namatayan din ako ng ama.
Yeah, di ba? It's like, pareho lang tayo.
Pareho lang tayo.
The
Parang
utter insensitive,
parang huwag kayo
di ba?
umarte. Ako rin
Hmm.
nagkaroon ako ng ganyan. Doon ako naman ang reawakening ko attorney naman because that time, during earlier than 2016, I wasn't really putting so much care about what's happening with the government. Kasi, syempre, pag yung trabaho namin, ang pakialam lang naman namin, we're very selfish people in the industry. So hanggat may trabaho kami, we do not care about what's happening around us, which I was part of that circle who don't really care yung mga tao na yan. Until yung Yolanda, yun naman ang aking awakening. I wouldn't say nag-reawaken ako kasi bata pa ako nung nangyari ang 1986 revolution. Ang awakening ko was really, Yolanda, what have you done to
To this
us?
day, yeah.
To this
Yeah.
day, actually.
Yeah.
So that's when I began reading back and looking at things that I have to look at. Kasi hindi naman pwede na ignorante pa rin ako eh. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
ganun din yan, attorney, nung dumating si Duterte, parang lahat ng tao nagkaroon ng pakialam. Parang
Yeah,
lahat ng
that's
tao
true.
suddenly voice their opinion. Sabi ko nga that the greatest thing that happened in the Duterte administration is lahat tayo nagkaroon ng pakialam. Kung mali man ang
Totoo.
sinasabi mo, at least may pakialam ka.
Yeah.
Yung gano'n naman na sa akin, dilawang ka, whatever, basta may pakialam ka, tara, din magsagutan tayo ng mga alam natin sa nangyayari. Ngayon, attorney, with what you have rediscovered, kasi mas rediscovery yun sa'yo attorney, dahil andun ka sa loob Andun ka sa loob
Yeah.
at kasalamuha mo sila, ang pamilya mo, kilala pa sila.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
attorney, habang nangyayari sa iyo yung mga bagay na yan, habang bumubukas sa mata mo, saan ka talaga yung sinabi mong ayoko na? Ayoko na.
Actually, maaga yan.
Why?
Kasi, well, it's no secret that I was also, di ba, against the Gloria administration. My
Mm.
clients were in jail. Di ba? They were in jail for opposing her. And it was the first time that also that there was so much dissatisfaction that you actually had military officers talking to leftists and all that, building coalitions against the administration. So it started early, yung mga ganyan. Pero the thing with the Aquino, the second Aquino administration, is that they held themselves out to be the answer. Now, of course, it was
Mm.
stupid of me to believe that. Diba? But I thought that they were going to introduce reforms, some kind of sanity, real development, something. Diba? I had no high hopes for culture and arts, by the way, because I
Mm.
know that there's like, it's a cultural wasteland when an Aquino is sitting in office. It only happened twice, but it's true. But, well, I mean, the facts will stand for themselves. Cory Aquino will go down in history as the person who took away the tax exemption of the CCP, and it has not been
Yeah,
returned to this day. So, so much for culture and arts, diba? For so
yeah.
much for so it's not true that if you're old rich that you're necessarily cultured. So no, it's not true.
Not
Obviously,
true.
so
Not true.
yeah,
Not true,
not
attorney.
true,
I have
not true.
seen a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah. So, diba? So the problem was they held themselves out to this. At parang they were always saying that you have to put Noy Noy in office because we're the good guys. Parang yun yung
Yeah.
narrative. Stupid me. Nga pala, because I remember you were the good guys. And although, to be fair, later on, we had the opportunity, my clients had the opportunity to be able to interact with Cory in the waning years of the Gloria administration. She was there to help out yung mga officers na umaalsa and all that. So she did, kumbaga, it was like a late awakening for Cory to realize that, politics pala isn't black and white. The people that you once were with don't turn out to be the good guys after all. It's possible that you were siding with the good guys or the bad guys, that she had to apologize to ERAP. Kumbaga, so many years after you became president, now you realize that there's no such thing as good versus evil. But why did you drink your own Kool-Aid? Gods, well, okay, that's our fault. We put all of the hopes and dreams in a single person who has let us
Mm.
down. So I was opposed to a Noy Noy presidency, but the real change later on came, it came in increments because, I was surprised that the Marcoses were on the side of Duterte. Na, because I know that his mother had been anti-Marcos, had been
Yes,
opposition.
yes.
She had supported the opposition, and we know that the family of his mom did a lot for the Katutubo. The Mandaya particularly benefited from the patronage of his mother. So we know that she was a true activist with really a heart for helping people and was
Yeah.
always helpful to the downtrodden. That's where Duterte gets it from. Eh. That's where Rodrigo Duterte gets it from his mother. He learned activism from her. So I was just a little surprised. Now wait a minute, iba yung politika ni Rodrigo Duterte. But I liked what I saw because he, without really saying much, hindi siya hard sell eh. But
Hindi.
he just, so he was the first, he started talking to Senator Amy, not like she's, a Marcos, but like, okay, this person, she helped me out. I recognize that and I honor that. Parang ganon. And it was, wait a minute, how can you treat her like everybody else? She's a Marcos. And then the libingan issue, right? Because
Yeah.
I knew the law of the libingan issue. And at first, di ba, when people were agitating, oh, ilibing na yan, there was only one thing that I could fall back on. If the military opposes it, then there's no way that he can be buried. But lo and behold, the military did not oppose it. And the rule that said that any veteran and all of that can be buried there, and past
Can be buried
presidents
there.
can be
Mhm.
buried there. It's just a rule, ha? It's not a law. And nobody, the president could have changed it. Any of the presidents could have changed it. They did not. Then it was when it was Duterte, suddenly he has the obligation to do what they were doing as against the rule. They were asking Duterte, a lawyer, to disobey the clear standards and the clear rules that were set by the AFP, a rule that could have easily been changed by Cory Aquino with a flick of the pen. Nobody bothered to do that. Now, it was either they were incompetent or relying simply on their narrative. And at this point, the
Mm.
narrative was no longer working.
Yeah.
Kumbaga, it lost steam. So that was
At
when, yeah.
attorney, with our episode,
Uh,
maneuvering the narrative,
uh,
dahil si Cory Aquino, yung tinawag siyang ina ng demokrasya, it's as if naman wala tayo sa demokrasya. We were in a democratic country. We 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 were in a democratic and we still are a democratic country. Hindi naman parang nawala ang demokrasya natin. Yung narrative na yon, attorney, yung wala tayong demokrasya, tirano si Ferdinand Marcos, diktador,
diktador
mamamatay
to tanang
tao,
kano.
kidnapper, lahat na ng superlative na kasamaan ibinigay kay President Marcos. Nung nakikita mo nangyayari lahat yan, attorney, and ikaw nakikita ko, you are very passionate with what you believe in. You are a lawyer. Kumbaga lumalaban ka rin para sa bayan. Nung nakikita mo yung narrative na yun, nakaupo si Cory Aquino, tapos nakikita mo na nangyayari lahat yan, how were you reacting during that time?
I came home, no? She was already president. I came home in, kailan ba ako mo? 87 or 8? Yeah, 87. I came home in 87. The revolution had happened and we were in the beginnings of the administration. So what I remember was that we were being bombarded by reliving the 86 thing all over again. Teddy Man Benigno, you remember him? He was press secretary for a while. Um,
Mhm.
and he had a column in the Philippine Star. So our newspapers were, of course, the Inquirer and the Philippine Star. I think everybody did,
Yes.
and I realized the effectivity of their communications. We were inundated with the single narrative. There was no other side. There's nothing that we could hear of the Marcoses, nothing that we could hear of the um, of any of them. Diba? It was all that. But I also had the benefit I joined the National Commission for Culture in the Arts right after I passed the bar in 1998. And the person who hired me was the chairman of the NCCA, a guy named Jaime Laya, who was central bank
Okay.
governor under Marcos, but was also the youngest he was the youngest dean of UP at the time. I think economics or business ad. And then when he was invited by President Marcos, there's no application, according to Dr. Laya. There's no application. There's nothing. One day he just got a call to go to Malacanang, so he drove there. And then he found himself talking to the president, President Marcos, who sat him down. They talked and they talked a while. And then he said, "Well, how would you like to be?" I forgot what he was at the start. It wasn't central bank right away. But he immediately and there and then he was sworn into office. The ability of Marcos to recognize talent is legendary to this day.
Yeah.
But so so I give a lot of credit to Dr. Laya, to Jimmy Laya, for guiding me in the first years of my practice. Not that he's not even a lawyer, but I've seen him manage a board meeting with subtlety and grace and leadership, absolute leadership. Alam mo yan, he walks into the room, you know he's in the room. Everybody's aware of his presence. The depth of his
Mhm.
intelligence, his knowledge, how widely read he is, and so on, and his general interest in all things cultural, and his ability to maneuver throughout government. That was the first kumbaga induction. And then the NCCA was involved in a case and I was helping him out. So he sent me to Lolong Lazaro to talk to him how I was going to handle the case because I was a new lawyer. I hadn't won anything major yet at the time, but he thought I could be advised by Attorney Lolong Lazaro, who I find out later on is one of those legal luminaries that I should have been quaking in my boots to be in his presence.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
so there I was getting advice from Lolong Lazaro, and then later on a conversation or two with Titong Mendoza. And so Dr. Laya had introduced me to all these greats. And even at the time, I understand Ronnie Zamora was executive secretary of President Erap, and often I had to go to him for you know I used to joke with him and say, I'm going up to the mount. Muhammad goes to the mountain because may
Ah,
problema na naman ako. I'm going to dump this on you. And then it came to the point that he would even make comments like, "Bata, ang aga-aga ha, alam mo na 'tong mga gulang na 'to." He would make comments like that. And I would say na, "Sir, hindi nga 'to gulang. I'm just trying to get through this case. You have to understand." So, barely a year into practice, because I was in the NCCA, I was arguing a case before the Court of Appeals. And,
mhm.
it was a huge step for me. And the people who shepherded me through that time were, as it turns out, Marcos people. So how can so at that point I was already changing my mind, not about Marcos itself nor that administration, but certainly about the people who surrounded him. And my husband was with the Solicitor General at the time, and they still speak in awe of Titong Mendoza and his stint as Solicitor General. So all of these stories, it's impossible to ignore the kind of talent that surrounded President Marcos. So,
Yeah.
di ba, you have to balance the narrative. At some point, you have to think, wait a minute. Wait, what? Di ba? You're prepared to draw horns on all of them, but it's impossible once you get to know them. And then realize that that the biggest talent recruiter of the century had to be Ferdinand Marcos. He just knew he had Bong Tangko in Agri. He had all of these bright people, uh,
Yeah.
and I had the benefit of that in my first few years in practice. So we got involved in a case that we later won, which we chalked up to be one of my first wins as a lawyer. And you know what? The funny thing was when Dr. Laya interviewed me, the only thing he asked me was, "When did you pass the bar?" I said, "A month ago." And I said, "Oh, okay, you'll do." I go, "Wait, what?" But of course, before that, we talked about music and art
Yeah,
and
yeah.
poetry and all of that. And then the last question was, "When did you pass the bar?" "Oh, a month ago." I said, "Okay, you'll do."
You will
So,
How did you take it? Parang, okay ba to? Is that a compliment? Or,
No, I joked with him later on na, "Sir, ang baba ng standards mo. I would not have gotten accepted otherwise." So there
yeah.
was that. There's all that background. No? So, and then, Rodrigo Duterte happened, and I think that was the kumbaga, the straw that broke the camel's
Oh,
back. Suddenly, you have to open it up. You have to balance the narrative. You realize
yeah.
that you've only hearing one side of the story. Of course, there are historians who wrote about that period. Pero even those historians will have to admit na in writing and in declaring heroes, we wait for like half a century. 50
Mm,
years. We need to get some distance from the events before we declare them heroic because you don't have that kind of objectivity when something has just happened. So, kunwari, within months after the People Power uh, event on EDSA, people were willing to declare, ready and willing to declare Ninoy Aquino a hero. We named things after him and all that. There's no objectivity yet. We're supposed to name streets and buildings after people who have died after some time and only after we have reviewed their accomplishments. People were in
yeah.
a rush to declare him then. And for me at the time, I thought it was either not really well thought of or worse, they intended this. They wanted to institutionalize the memory of these people, and part of that memory is invented. So, yun nga. So suddenly you have all of these, you know, Ninoy monuments
Yeah.
rivaling the number of monuments that Rizal has. I mean, there's an actual law about Rizal monuments, but none about the Ninoy Aquino. So there was that.
So,
So
attorney, ikaw bilang
suddenly
isang
you get
abogado,
perspective. Uh,
yeah. Ikaw, attorney, bilang abogado, yan na sinasabi pagmamadali sa
uh,
pagkabayani ni Nonoy Aquino na alam naman nating intentionally minadali yan. I mean, let's just call spade a spade. Hindi naman yan para, kasi nga, that time, aminin naman natin, lahat tayo in awe na natanggal si
yes.
Marcos, ang pinakapalakas na tao sa Pilipinas, tinanggal ng isang babae. Ganyan ang narrative eh. Hindi ba,
Yeah.
attorney? Isang babae lang ang katapat ng isang napakalakas na force.
Mm,
Ganyan ang kwento.
yeah.
Tapos biglang ginawang bayani si Ninoy Aquino, pinangalan ng airport, roads and everything.
Yeah.
Attorney, bilang ikaw abogado ka, alam mo ang batas at alam mo kung paano ito tumatakbo. Sa ginawa bang batas na konstitusyon noong 1987, posible ba na itong ginawa nila na pagmamadali sa pagkabayani ni Ninoy Aquino, pwede nating tanggalin?
Well, of course, because uh, laws or even the name laws, but the name of streets not so. But laws we change because we change the laws because we change too. Our values change. And laws are
Mm.
an expression of societal values, di ba? What we hold dear, what we want to protect, nagbabago din yan. So, binabago din natin ang batas. But we also, it's not just laws. We also change the perspective of history as time goes by. Sometimes because it works for us, the narrative works. Let's say the Philippine Revolution is almost always significant for us because this was the birth of the nation. That's where we put the birth of the nation. I disagree, but anyway, that's there.
Mm.
But uh, the narrative of 1986, diba, was well, I don't think well, kumbaga, we balance also that narrative. Nagmamadali ba sila because of the euphoric feeling? I will grant that. But at some point, I think they also were in a rush to put in, to change names. Names of streets, names of ano.
Mm.
Suddenly, if something was named Marcos, ew, gumagano na, di ba? It was just not politically correct anymore. So there's that. They changed, kumbaga, not just the landscape, but also our memories, our own. They were tampering with our memories. And then at the time, the stories that we're hearing now, that we didn't hear that before. I was one of the first to interview for social media, JPE, Senator
Mm, mm.
Enrile. And the story he told about his participation in 1986 is so radically different from what I understood it to be. To this day, people are saying it was a coup d'etat. Well, on Enrile's part, he says that General Ver's soldiers were out to kill him. There was a coup d'etat, yes, and then there was a counter coup d'etat because it was General Ver who's prepared to take over uh, government, and of course there was the side of the RAM and SF, ano, sa SFU, YOU, and
Mm-mm.
all of that. Um, uh, who were also counter countering that supposed coup d'etat by Ver's men. So it seems to me that the narrative was a lot more complicated than they made it look. But that's one of the geniuses of their storytelling. They simplified it. What it came down to was 86 was a narrative of good versus evil. Of course, sila yung good.
Yeah.
Marcos evil. And for them, the little details about Enrile being targeted for assassination and the coup d'etat and counter coup d'etat, they were too complicated. They wanted to tell a simple story because they needed to make it, the stuff of myth, of legend. And if it was too complicated, people would end up arguing about the details. So it was simple. Dictator toppled by the widow. A widow who, by the way, was not even at EDSA. Glossed
Yeah,
over that
yeah.
fact. Glossed over that fact. No, she wasn't at EDSA, but yet she's considered one of the heroes of EDSA. And then even the name, even if it was a mere coincidence that it was EDSA, they made a big deal about Epiphany of the Saints. Nax, di ba? Parang, this too was significant. Not a coincidence. Divine intervention and all that. It was a good story,
Yes,
but it
it
suffers under
was.
close
I
scrutiny.
believed
Yeah.
in that story my whole
I did
life.
too. I was sold. I was
Yeah,
completely
was
sold. Lock,
sold.
stock, and barrel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was upset. I wasn't at the revolution. Now I should be thankful pala. My mother shipped me out. She's afraid I would join.
Yeah.
So, yun yan.
Now, attorney,
These things, di ba?
yeah. Now, attorney na ito, nag-ugat lahat yan dyan ang kwento ng
Mm,
1986 revolution at talagang pinanghawakan ng Liberal Party yan for 30 years. Talaga namang iba ang
mm,
nararamdaman natin kapag naaalala natin ang EDSA Revolution. Meron tayong sense of pride.
mm.
Meron tayong
Yeah.
sense of accomplishment at meron
Yeah.
tayong tinitignan na isang matibay na kwento ng ating kasaysayan. Kumbaga, ganon. Ngayon, nung pumwesto to si Noynoy Aquino, maganda rin na naging presidente natin yan dahil nakita natin kung ano ba talaga ang kwento. Nakita
Di
talaga
ba?
natin kung ano talaga ang nangyari. Nakikita
Ah.
natin kung ano yung other side of the coin. Attorney,
Mm,
itong ginagawa nila ngayon, itong ginagawa nila ngayon dito sa kampanya na na si Lene Robredo ay parang si Cory Aquino, na si Lene Robredo ay may kabuluhan na ganyan ang gusto nilang itatag na sa utak natin kay Lene Robredo. Sa tingin mo ba, Atty., alam naman natin na hindi masyado nang kinakagat, pero bakit sa tingin mo may kumakagat pa din?
I think some people are emotionally invested in the good versus evil narrative. And that's what they're trying to foist on us. Duterte evil, Lenny good. Marcos evil, Lenny good. Ito, nakikita nila ba kung gano'ng kababaw ng bangko nila. it's,
Oo.
it's Lenny versus Duterte, and then now it's Lenny versus Bongbong Marcos. Wala na bang iba? And obviously, discredited na si Marlojas. He has lost a major election.
Yeah.
There, Kiko Pangilinan can't even muster enough percentage points, di ba? To to get past Tito Soto. Uh, that I think that it's just, yeah, it's still the same old narrative. It's still the poor
Yeah.
widow trying going up against the tyrant, and now the poor widow against tyrant junior. So it's numinipis na. Alam mo
Numinipis
yan
na.
na it's like when you're an actor, you see how the movie magic is made. So for you, it's not magic. You see all the puppet strings. So parang naging ganun tayo. Suddenly you got a peek at the behind the scenes machinery, and ay, hindi pala magic. Ay, the laser swords pala don't look like that. Ay, CGI pala siya. Hindi ko napansin. Parang ganun. And then, you're no longer fooled. Pero dati, grabe smoke and mirrors nila. The things that
Oh,
they
yeah.
were not saying pala were the more important things. And we didn't know that. So
We
now,
didn't know that.
but before Duterte, it would have been impossible to tell an alternative story. Grabe yung topic
Exactly.
nila eh. 'Di ba? And
Exactly.
even when, I remember an argument that was raging on social media a few weeks ago, meron nagsasabi na, how can you say that, that the Yellows have been in power for over 30 years? Eh, hindi naman, sila yung presidente nung si Erap, tsaka nung si GMA and all that. Regardless, it was, in fact, regardless of who was president, they had power. In fact,
Yeah.
that's why they were able to oust Erap. He wasn't towing their line. Erap was, is a vestige of the Marcos years. They couldn't let him stay as president. And we know the
Yeah.
slings that it took for them to oust him. And then they felt that Gloria Arroyo was one of them until later on she wasn't anymore. And then saka na lang sila sumali dun sa aming mga hampas lupa who were opposed to her. So, alam niyo, ang hirap na silang to pass it off. And of course, we can thank social media for that.
We can thank social
Dati,
media for that.
di ba?
Yes.
In the 80s, it was what we call the mosquito press, remember? Yung Mr. and
Mosquito
Miss.
press. But dalhin mo nga kami dyan, attorney.
Uh-huh.
Ano yung
Do
mosquito
you remember
press?
this? Do you remember Mr. and Miss? Na,
The
Letty
magazine.
Magsanok, Tita Letty, who I love dearly, sumakalangit nawa. She and Tita Eggy and all of these people, uh, because they felt that during the Marcos years, their side of the story was not being put out. And yung mga brave noon were the female journalists, Arlene Babs, Nines Cacho Olivares, of course, Taletti, and so on. All of these were supposedly the fighting, fearless females. And they needed a way to get their stories out because dun sa mga newspapers that they were writing for, they were being subjected to the editorial policy. They couldn't write against Marcos. So there was the informal publications. And Tita Letty, who had Mr. and Miss, they suddenly started producing bootleg Mr. and Miss. Na ano lang, iba, newsprint lang, tapos
Uh-huh.
they weren't even bothering to sell them anymore. Dati they were going for like a peso. And then habang palapit yung 86, they were just giving them away para malabas yung mga stories about the Marcos excesses and all of that. And there was no more controls. Para siyang yun yung social media at the time, although not as interactive. They would bring out the stories, some of them exaggerated. So there's no very little editorial
Uh-huh.
control. Kumbaga, wala nang fear of libel and all of that kasi kaya nilang itago. Yung mga yan, there were no authors pero labas lang sila ng labas. And this was what helped turn the tide in 86. It whipped the people up into a frenzy. And
Ah.
that's one of the factors that led to the to 86. So the use of media is something that we should always watch out for, and it's still what they're trying to do now, except now they're in control of mainstream media. Sila na ngayon. They're the, how do you call this, they're the tyrants, they're the Marcos of the time. Sila na yung
Mm-hmm.
ganon,
Mm-hmm.
and we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep them out of power. We try to keep them from ousting Duterte and reimposing that old narrative. It doesn't work anymore. So this is the narrative that I am seeing, the waves of change that are going on.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Nakakaano lang kasi lagi kami Mr. and Miss when I was growing
Remember?
up. Yeah, yeah. Kasi
Uh,
hinahide nga nila yan into a glamour magazine Na ang cover,
Di
mga
ba? It was,
artistang love team or mga
uh,
models. Tapos, syempre, di naman
mm,
ako, I don't read that. I read
uh,
another stuff. Like, lifestyle lang ako ng, ano nun
um,
ng Life and
Mod.
Leisure.
I bet you read Mod. Di ba
Mod,
Mod?
yeah.
MOD.
I was reading Mod.
These are the
Yeah.
lifestyle magazines of the time. Oh my
PR
gosh, I'm just
magazine.
dating
That's
myself.
those were just
Oh,
the
yan.
magazines I was reading.
Mhm.
I didn't know of Mr. and Miss kasi nga pag binubuksan ko siya, wala namang nakikita glamour
It's not it was the
articles.
bootleg
Kaya
Mr. and
nga
Miss, not
So
not the magazine. So,
maganda ang
uh,
taktika nila. So ngayon,
yeah,
attorney,
they're good at their
nakita
job.
natin ang changes. Changes
Mm-hmm.
happen. In fact, when President Duterte came into power, sinasabi nila change is scamming. Ini-scam lang
Ah,
naman
yeah,
daw ni
yeah, yeah.
Duterte ang change. Remember na ganun ang talagang
Ah,
gusto nilang iparating sa mga tao.
ah,
Pero ang mga tao ngayon, especially ito ng lumakas na ang social media, kayo,
mm.
attorney, ang isa sa mga una na nakita namin na nagmatapang talaga Tapos kami ni Vivian
Matapang ba yun?
Velez noon, nag-put up kami, kinuha kami ni Miss Kay Dacer to host this radio show in her radio network in A-Tri Media kasi sabi niya wala nga daw boses ang Duterte administration that time. Isa si Kay Dacer sa
Ah,
umalis sa ABS-CBN to put up her own because she believes in the
okay.
president.
Yeah,
So kami ni
yeah,
Vivian
yeah.
naman, kayo nun nakikita ko noon attorney, kayo nila Miss Vivian, kayo nila attorney Bruce,
Ah,
kayo ang magkakasama noon na talagang lumalaban. Kayo ang
yeah.
talagang nagbigay ng bagong mukha sa social media to make social media not just anymore share of pictures, kulitan, hindi na siya naging ganon Iniba nyo ang landscape ng information platform. You made social media na parang, wow, ako ganun na naging reaction ko nung nakikita ko na kayo na hindi ka pa nga attorney nun, wala pa nga ang Luminous nun
Mm.
Ah, yeah,
Yung
yeah.
personal page pa lang, oh.
Yes. Nakikita ko lang kayo nila Vivian Velez sa sinishare-share nyo ang isa't isa. Kaya
Yeah.
nababasa na kita noon pa 2017.
Mm.
So, attorney, nung ginagawa mo yon, what was your hope? Did you see the light at the end of the tunnel? Na talagang itong light na to, it will be as bright as, headlight ng truck. Ganun ba ang nakita mo na while you were starting to be who you are now?
Nung ano, when Noy Noy became president, the first thing I asked, kasi he took some of my clients became, were helping him out in his presidency. So before he became president, just before, nanalo na siya, the one thing that I asked was, rebelde pa rin ba tayo? Tinanong ko. And sinabi sa akin, baka hindi na. Let's help out this new administration. Ganon na, grabe ang high hopes. Delusional pa kami na. Until yun na nga, until yun na nga, nakita ko well, the utter incompetence of the whole thing. Oh my God.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
early on, executive order number 1, right off the bat, right out of the starting gate, unconstitutional kagad. Nakakaloka, di ba? Parang, do you even know how to write an executive order? I mean, what kind of people did you put in there? I mean, hindi pa Deputy Executive Secretary si Maynard Guevara noon, and he used the brains of the office of the Executive Secretary later on. But kumbaga, it was just incompetence from day one. Parang, wait, what? We put we put that there? We put
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this oh my gosh, kumbaga, it boggles the mind. It's like we chose the most incompetent person who could possibly occupy the office, and we made him president. We chose the most do nothing senator and then made him president, like we had a death wish or something. So
Yeah.
so it started there, it started yung but I was still firmly on the side of the republic. Kumbaga, well, I still am. I was more like, oh, sige, let's make this work. Let's make this work. After all, how bad can he be? He's not Gloria. And as it turns out, he was worse. So, in my eyes, suddenly, di ba, at least si Gloria matalino. She had her economic policies right. She had the principles correctly. Plus, she was a devilishly good politician. To our
Yeah.
detriment, of course, hindi makalusot kami mga rebelde sa kanya because she was always 2, 3 steps ahead. She knew how to handle the whole thing. She knew how to handle local governments. She knew how to butter their bread. And, and then, you go from Gloria, who's so devilishly clever, to somebody who's hugely incompetent. You wonder how he gets up in the morning without
I
any
know.
help. So, yeah, sumakalangit nawa. I don't really
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
think ill of the dead, and yet this is historical fact. What can you do? But
yeah. What can
and
you
then we're
do?
seeing that now. And in fact, this is my problem with a Lenny candidacy. It's as though they're promising us another Aquino administration. Please, God, no.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, this is this is the future. It isn't even about Bongbong Marcos, although I'm glad that he's the one who's running, because it shatters the narrative. For me, it's not just Bongbong, because he's clearly a very good guy. I've gotten to know him, but that he represents the antithesis of that yellow narrative. For me, it's poetic justice. Now let's put in the guy whose family you ran out of the country on the strength of your narrative. So,
Yeah.
kumbaga, let's put him back because I know it kills you. Kumbaga,
Only for that.
if only
Wag
for
na nga
that,
yung
para sa akin,
brilliance niya
yes.
eh. Only for that. Yeah.
So, yun yung ano ko, yun yung, and so that's what I see.
Mm.
It's a Noy Noy Aquino redo. Diba? With Lenny Robredo in the title role, and the same level of incompetence, the same narrative. Oh, the true, the good, and the beautiful. They were accusing Imelda Marcos of using that term, the true, the good, and the beautiful. But the essence of that statement is actually something they're practicing. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. You should make us win. Like, really? Why should I believe you? You become the bad guy by the sheer force of your incompetence and stupidity.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Seriously. And that's what I don't like. It's the fact that they think so lowly of us. That's
Of
what
us.
that's what
Giving us the
Lenny
motherhood
candidacy represents.
statements. Attorney, di
Yes.
ba?
Mm.
Oo.
Parang, how stupid do you think we are? That you're telling us all this, that you're trying to redo 1986 under a more constitutional atmosphere. But it's still the same narrative. What, you know, do you think that after two Aquino presidencies, and you, Mrs. Robredo, coming in like a pseudo Aquino substitute, pseudo na substitute pa, pero but it's
Poor
the
man's
same
Cory.
level. Diba? It's the same level. So you go from so can you see the progress here? I
Yeah.
meet all of these Marcos people who not only are competent, they refine their culture, they're intelligent, they know their place. When things had changed, they still knew their place. They stayed here, they continued to work for the good of the country. How can you say that it was an evil administration that they came from? And then you have all of
Yeah.
these intelligent people, and then you have Noy Noy Aquino on the other end of that. I mean, if you don't see the difference by now, the blindness is irreversible. But
Yeah.
that's my point. Do you see the progression there? You meet somebody like Dr. Laya, and then
Yeah.
you have Noy Noy Aquino who can't even make a decent executive order number one. And you want
Attorney,
Lenny Robredo.
itong ginagawa nila, no? Nandiyan
Uh,
dyan ang kanilang narrative na 1986, nandiyan yung paganda. Itong ginagawa nila sa atin, yung parang i-edit nila ang picture to make it look like a lot of people attended. What is your
yan,
take
mga
on that?
ganyan.
I mean,
Diba?
wow, di ba? Ano
My take on
ito?
that is
Uh-huh.
simple. How dare you say, unang-una, ay sinungaling siya. Now, you accuse somebody of lying, and then you're going to foist something like this on us. I mean, how stupid do you think we are? That's my point. They think so little of us. That is my problem
Yeah.
with Lenny Robredo and the people she is with.
Yeah.
They think so little of us. They think we're stupid, that we're cattle, that we're going to, that we're going to take this whole thing that we haven't learned from the past 30 years, that
Mhm.
that we don't
Mhm.
recognize a good thing when we see it, or a bad thing when we know that
When we
bad thing is trying to become president. No.
no.
Definitely not. So yun yan. So and it's with a heavy hand, no? Unlike yung before, where you had people like, of course, Letty Magsanok, brilliant writer, brilliant editor,
Yeah.
her love her to this day. um the Inquirer, when it was still sane, used to take up the same causes I was taking up. So it was heritage, yung mga officers who I was representing, who were opposing Gloria and all of that, the ouster of Erap, that oops wait, by the way, mali yata tayo doon, and so on. So and kumbaga, we thought along the same lines, and yeah, they knew how to do it. Kumbaga, if you were
Yeah.
going to oust a president, they knew how to do it. These ones, oh my gosh, we're lucky kung makasakay sila ng jeep papuntang kanto. The can you imagine entrusting, well, from what we understand, no, given the cases that were filed against Senator Trillanes, that it seems that he presents himself as, or presented himself as the solution to Duterte. So there's this Bicoy thing and all of these things. I mean, if you're opposition, you would entrust an operation that's supposed to topple a man like Rodrigo Duterte, who knows your bad side and all of that, who knows
Yeah.
so many things, who's a wily politician. You send an Antonio Trillanes to go after him. Seriously, what's wrong with you? Diba? I like the fighting spirit and all that, but you couldn't have chosen a
Totoo.
worse person.
Alam mo yung guts ni Trillanes talaga,
They
unbelievable.
don't match
Ako
the
talaga
brains.
napapapalakpak ako kay Trillanes. Yung parang, wow! Kakaiba ka. Kakaiba ka. And you don't give up. You just don't give up. Only for tenacity, papalakpakan ko talaga si
That's
Trillanes.
true. A for effort man lang. I have
A
to
for
give him that.
effort
A for
talaga.
effort. Totoo yan. Totoo yan. But
Attorney,
I'm not
ngayon
touching
na
that.
ito na medyo lumilinaw ang ating mga excited, ang ating mga viewers, because you are here and
Uh,
they are really taking in and they are absorbing everything that you
uh,
are saying right now. Attorney, kasi President Duterte ay nagdidili-dali para pinagdalaruan tayo. Ang aking susuportahan ay letter O ang pangalan.
then
May
everybody
U
has
pa
an O.
pala. Oo, may ganyan. May ganyan si President Duterte. Lahat ng
He's still
kandidato may
calling
O.
us. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, he's still calling.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sa iyong palagay, attorney, no, dahil ang iyong expertise naman ay hindi natin matatawaran. Sa iyong palagay, does it still matter who he endorses? Does it
Ako, I don't
still?
think it
Would
does.
it still
Uh,
matter?
yeah. Well, I don't think it does anymore at this point. For me, kasi it doesn't, kumbaga, walang gain for President Duterte. For himself, I'm not talking about his party, or allegedly his
Mm,
party. It doesn't act like PDP Laban kasi. But
yeah.
PDP Laban needs to endorse somebody, but they can't also afford to endorse a losing candidate. On the other hand, the president can afford to say, I can't endorse because ano ba naman yan, mag endorse siya ng unity, may anak niya yung tumatakbo. On the other hand, if he endorses not the unity, kaya naman, anak mo tumatakbo. Diba? Talk about family problems. So, so there's no gain for him. Pag in-endorse niya yung unity, natural, anak mo yan eh. Pag hindi niya in-endorse, grabe ka, yung anak mo, hindi mo in-endorse. So, what's there for him?
Damn if you
It
do,
doesn't,
damn if you don't.
correct, correct. So why
Mhm.
bother? He shouldn't na. Tingin ko he shouldn't. And I think the dilly-dallying is just, he's going to do that until the end of it. But if he does
Oh,
endorse somebody, I feel that it will be under pressure from the PDP Laban. Because in order to survive, they need to be able to make an endorsement with a good fighting chance of winning. But I need the konting reality check. Even if the president endorses a tandem other than the uni team, there's no guarantee of winning. Because,
mm.
Lenny Robredo talks about momentum. The real momentum is with uni team. How can you
Yes,
beat a
yes.
60%, 60% of the people surveyed
Rating. Yeah.
going for BBM, and not far from that 54% for Inday Sara. I mean, seriously, how are you going to beat that with only 57 days left? And and bardagulan going on in social media, plus
Yeah.
the incompetence, the sheer incompetence of the Lenny Robredo camp, na inaaway nila yung potential voters. They haven't stopped.
I know.
Yeah. In what universe does this make sense? But then it does in the yellow narrative. Kasi they're so used to being in power, and that they can say that I'm going to win anyway, with or without your endorsement, and I don't care if I piss you off, I'm going to win. Ganon sila for so many years, because either it's still good versus evil and all that, and we chose the least evil or something like that. uh,
Yeah.
their candidates end up winning, and if it's not their candidate, then take them out, like that they did with Erap, or try to take her out, like what they did inadvertently with Gloria. So
Mhm.
sumali na lang sila sa amin noon na questioning Gloria, when they decided that, oy, ayaw pala din pala ni Gloria sa amin. They weren't getting the concessions that they wanted from her. And so, ayan. Diba? She was more along the lines of Gibo Chodoro rather than Noy Noy Aquino.
I voted for Gibo on 2010 because
I
I
love
just couldn't
Gibo.
really get myself to write the name of, to shade for the name of Noynoy Akira. I just couldn't. So I voted for Gibo.
Ay, oo. Yeah.
But attorney, ito ngayon sa nangyayari, nakikita
Oo.
natin how they're trying to manipulate the narrative, how they are still trying to make it seem like na parang nakakatawa, 15% ang rating mo, pero yung confidence mo, mas mataas pa sa
Sa
Mayon volcano
100%.
that I have just seen yesterday. So, ang taas-taas ng confidence ni Leni Robredo talaga. And of course,
Oo.
biglang nangyari na lumabas ang issue ng COMELEC na imprenta na ng 60%, more than 60% of the ballot na kine-question ngayon ni Senator Amy Marcos na bakit niyo yan ginawa nang
Mm.
walang nakatingin. 60% of the ballots. So attorney, paano ito? Paano ito? Kasi si Director Jimenez talagang medyo may kakapalan na mukha eh. Yung pinaninindigan niya talaga
Yeah.
yung pagiging independent constitutional body ng COMELEC na parang walang pakialam ang kahit sino sa magiging desisyon nila. Attorney, ito bang ganitong pagkagarapal ni Director Jimenez? Of course, the Rappler thing, thanks to Secretary Calida, na natanggal na natin. It's out of the way. Ito bang ginagawa nila dito sa balota? Sa tingin nyo, malapit na ang May eh. Masusolusyonan ta ba ito, attorney? Sa tingin mo, with Senator Amy, binubugbog sila?
Well, I think my take on this is a little different. No? I'm not as worried about the ballots that were printed.
Mhm.
But I understand that Senator Amy is putting it on record. Kumbaga, this is a strong message to the COMELEC. We're watching you. But the ballots being printed, for me, that's a regular thing. With or without observers, tutuloy naman talaga yung printing yan kasi baka hindi umabot. We have no remedy for a delay in the elections. Wala tayong ganon because the election date is set by law. So that's
Mhm.
one. The other is, my worry is that so many people are concerned about that, but the people who first raised it were NAMFREL, and I don't really trust NAMFREL. Yan, kumbaga,
Mhm.
because parang dalawang paligo away from dilaw lang yung mga yan. I'm
Yeah.
sorry for the term. But if they raised it, then I think it's more like misdirection. There's something else that we should be worrying about. And for me, because the Solicitor General acted on the Rappler thing, then we should take it that it is the president who saw that problem and directed the Solicitor General to go after it, to go after that MOA. That for me was far, far more dangerous because mistakes in the printing of the ballots, we can catch that. That's something that can be remedied. And in fact, Senator Amy is doing something about it by making it off record in the Senate proceedings. The COMELEC now is put on notice. Do something with these ballots. We already know that it will be easier to come after you. Kasi may notice na
Mhm.
sila, alam namin ginawan mo to. And
Mhm.
the problem with the main cheating mechanism when it comes to ballots isn't what is printed on it so much as it is the number of ballots that you're going to print. And so, di ba,
Okay.
yung surplus, yun yung ginagamit, yun yung tinatawag namin na extra rice. As well as the
Okay.
surplus voters. The other magic that was going on was registration and reactivation of voters' accounts. So, if you're going to cheat, kumbaga, with a certain number of votes, that's where you're going to make the magic happen during
Mhm.
registration. That's why I was always on notice. Did you notice ang naghihikayat ng go out and register or reactivate who? Yung mga dilaw, mga kaalyado ni Leni Robredo. So sabi ko, people like Christian Monsod and all of that, they were, they had projects for getting people to reactivate or to register and so on. So if they had this activity going on and then, we have 6 million new voters, they could claim it as their achievement. But my question is, are those real voters? Because this is where we're going to play around with the numbers. But like with any elections, even with the an efficient machinery like Smartmatic, you can only cheat with so many. Uh,
Mhm.
if you have a candidate that's so far in the lead, if you change that, it's not going to be accepted eh. Hindi siya tanggap. That's when revolutions begin. But so you don't want a 1986 but this time on our side, di ba? There go.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what we can do if we change the constitution? Think of the damage I could do. What if they put me in charge? Oh my god, di ba? Patay sila. But that's not going to happen, by the way. Don't worry, everybody calm down. It's not going to happen.
Sa attorney, nakikita naman natin ang traction ni BBM, na
Mm,
talaga napakalayo ng kanyang numero. Parang
mm,
nag-aaway-away na lang sa second place because BBM is
diba?
really ahead of the survey. Halimbawang nanalo si BBM, do you see the Dilawan or the LP doing what they have done to ERAP?
Well, they tried to do it with Duterte. I don't see why not. They only have one script eh.
Mhm,
Kumbaga,
mhm,
iisa
mhm.
yung narrative nila eh. These people are
Yeah,
bad. We have to take them out even if it's unconstitutional, etc.
yeah.
It's arrogance for me that they think that they
Uh,
know better than the majority. And they always think that way because that's exactly what 1986 was about these elite people who come from, who hindi naman sila masyadong naghihirap as compared to the people they were allegedly protecting. Di ba? Kaming mga hampas lupa.
exactly.
They went to EDSA supposedly for and on behalf of the hampas lupa of the country. Pero sa totoo lang, who benefited from that? Naghati-hati na lang sila sa pwesto. So
Actually,
nobody really talks about that part of it, diba?
yeah,
So
yeah,
of course they're going to try. No, that I wouldn't. It would be stupid for us not to think that or not to be prepared for that scenario. We should always
yeah.
be prepared. The good
And
thing
I think
about
we
this,
are, attorney, at the rate we're going, I think we are, right?
we're
Yeah.
so jaded.
Ngayon, yeah.
6 years of Duterte, di ba? So, of course, they'll try. Di nga nila nilubayan yung the meanest SOB to ever occupy the presidency. They tried anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Ngayon, attorney, pupunta tayo sa mga excited nating mga ka-3 PM to read some comments and questions for you because I know
Okay.
everyone is excited to hear from you sa kanilang mga comments and questions. Mac? Mac, are you there?
Hi, Mac.
Hello,
Right
hello,
now.
guys.
Matulog. Oh my
Backstage.
God.
Ayan.
I must have
Good
bored them
evening
to
po.
death.
Good evening po, Attorney Trixie. Luto na ba talaga ang result ng election 2022, Gerald?
I don't really say I don't think so. Like I said, no, the even Smartmatic will admit that they can only cheat so much. Kumbaga, if you can only play around with so many numbers. So no, as long as you keep a good and comfortable lead of your candidates, they're going to have to think twice about messing with at least with the presidential election. And lightning doesn't strike twice.
Yeah,
Because if it
yeah,
does, well, actually, it's not true. No, it's just the saying. Lightning
yeah.
actually strikes more often in certain places than others. So it's not. There's no scientific basis for that saying. Nevertheless, we're going to say it anyway. It's going to be difficult to cheat a BBM one more time. People are just not going to accept it anymore. And
And people are not going to allow that.
but we also have to always be on our guard, because the people like Lenny Robredo and all that, they want us to lose faith in the electoral system. They want that we might end up doing the work for them. Kasi who benefits if people lose faith in the system? If people think, until there, wag na tayong bumoto. If we
Yeah,
stay away from the polling places, our guy is in the lead. Who's gonna suffer? who gets a fighting chance if our people are the ones who stay away from the polls? If we keep saying luto na yan, if we keep saying cheating is a done deal, people are not going to bother to go to the polls. And some of the people who are not going to bother are people who would normally have voted for BBM. If BBM is surveying as a majority president, then the same number of people who would have voted for him would also stay away. So how does that benefit us? If we're going to uh, keep putting it out there that the system is rigged, it's not gonna happen. Yan, luto na ba talaga ang election? This is also very dangerous for our candidate.
Yeah.
Di ba?
Yeah.
Lenny would benefit from that. Even if she inevitably loses, she's going to say, nadaya ako. Kasi tignan nyo, kayo na nga yung nag-race ng ganito, ganito, ganito. The only thing wrong with her narrative is that the leading candidate does not have any impetus to cheat. She has better better reasons to do that. Nevertheless, they can use that narrative. They can, di ba? What did they try to do with Duterte? Hindi naman siya majority president eh.
Oh,
But he's president. What are you talking about?
he
And in
won.
this one, you won. And they can't even challenge that win. They can't even say Duterte cheated. The best thing they can do is that if Lenny is fake, then Duterte is fake. Of course, that's not true because he can cheat for a single candidate without affecting the returns of the other candidates. Sino niloloko nitong mga to? And
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
what we call fudging on the truth, di ba? Not exactly a lie, but not exactly the truth either,
Mhm.
which means
Mhm.
it's still a lie. So,
So Gerald, bubuhos tayo ng boto. Walang hindi
yan.
boboto.
It's in
Yan.
our
From
hands,
Fred.
guys.
It's in
Yeah,
our
it's in our
hands,
hands.
actually.
Yeah.
Do you think her alliance with the CPP-NPA is true?
I think that she's sympathetic with people who are allied with the CPP, NPA, NDF. So, and the nice thing about the Duterte administration is that there are people who are willing to call a spade a spade. Nowadays, they call it red tagging, but it's still calling a spade a spade. Because if you aid and abet a rebellion, which is a crime, and terrorism, which is a crime and a crime against humanity as well, then aren't you one way or another, diba? If you aid and abet a terrorist under our law, you're also a terrorist.
You're also
But the problem is
terrorists.
proving that link. Nevertheless, we know, and it is part of their own, how do you call this, their own plans. The CPP, NPA, NDF, they don't make any secret of the fact that one branch is above ground and another branch is underground. Dito, yung mga RA, the people who have not
Mm, mm, mm.
rebuked and have not who affirm the armed struggle. There are people who sympathize with them and people who for instance, if somebody from the underground talks to somebody who's above ground, kumbaga, one of their front organizations, asks him for a loan, asks him for a job, asks him for take on a different identity, you have them live in your house and all that, that's aiding and abetting. That's giving aid and comfort if it were not, if it were a war. But in terrorism, that's also a form of
Considered.
terrorism. Diba?
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
yung mga ganon, it's just really difficult to prove. But
Yeah.
even they don't deny their sympathies eh. Even they don't deny. Kumbaga ako, I'm
Did you hear
pretty sure.
Sharon Cuneta talking about that, attorney?
Yeah,
How
although of course there
stupid
is
was
context.
she?
But yeah,
That's
yeah,
a,
still stupid. I think
yeah,
there's context to that, but it's still stupid, even with
yeah,
context.
it's so stupid. Thank you, Fred. You have to prove it. Karen Minyaw, as an OFW na gumagastos para magpabalot ng plastic tuwing magbabakasyon to be safe sa laglagbala at biktima rin ng mga magulang ko sa revolutionary tax at libreng pahapunan sa mga NPA na mga babae pa yung iba during my elementary days in Negros, bakit feeling paawa yung VP na confirmed present ang mga teroristang NPA sa campaign rally niya? Namamayagpag na naman ng NPA if ina nila ang mananalo out of pandaraya na Smartmatic. Red tagging na lang lagi ang excuse at walang condemnation sa mga terorista. Mabigat ang pinanggagalingan ni Karen,
Mm.
uh,
From personal
attorney.
experience yan. Oh,
Personal experience.
we cannot afford to be dismissive na naghihirap din ng mga tao dahil sa NPA. And directly, they blow up bridges, public works, they stop the roads from being built, and ako personally, okay, I went to Sulu a few years back when they were doing the circumferential road. And
Mm.
sinabi talaga sa amin ng mga Marines who were there na very palpable. The moment the roads got built, nawalan ng taguan yung mga Abu Sayyaf. The rate of kidnappings went down drastically. Development
Mm.
is key to these,
Key.
ano, even if it's just a road, ha? Ang laki ng naitutulong sa mga tao doon. So when the NPA blow up public works, like the equipment for building roads, you know that they're not for the people. They're there to ensure that poverty will give them an endless stream of recruits. They're looking for the downtrodden, the people who feel they have been left out. Yung mga students who feel that an injustice is being committed and all that. These are their these are their fresh blood. Kumbaga, they need these warm bodies for their continued armed struggle. And so it is not in their interest to bring peace and
Mm.
prosperity to the yung tinatawag nilang kanayunan. Wala sa agenda
Yeah.
nila yan. So
Yeah.
how can you preach peace and prosperity to us while being allied with the very people who are against it? You cannot be in bed with these people. To be fair, Duterte tried. He held out the olive branch.
Yes. Yes.
He tried to make the peace talks work. And then finally said no. Ako talaga, anti-peace talks na ako. They're just using that. They're just using
Yeah.
that to buy time. None of the peace talks have worked. And in some instances, they make it look like it's working for a while. And then somehow, it is always government's fault that something
Yeah.
happens para nalulusaw na naman ng peace talks. It's not gonna happen. Okay, I think
Not
it's
gonna
time to
happen.
to recognize that fact that they are just kumbaga, and I know this for a fact talking to them, that there's only one thing that is important: the good of the party. That is the orientation of the CPP, NPA, NDF, and even those that are above ground, even those who have rejected the armed struggle. It's still the party comes first. Before your family, before the nation, they have no God, or even if they do, the party comes first. So they're not in it for us. They're not either. They'll
Mhm.
say that they're in it for justice and all of that pretty words, but it's really not about that. So you
Yeah.
can't be in
Yeah.
bed with them.
Karen, kung babalikan mo yung ating mga episodes with Ka Eric, Ka Amihan at kay Dre Toledo, because I've spoken with them, attorney,
Mhm.
kung babalikan mo yun, makikita mo at mas maiintindihan mo, Karen, kung ano ang nangyayari doon sa kanilang samahan at kung bakit sila bumalik sa gobyerno. Balikan
Mhm.
mo, Karen, yung mga episodes na yon. Scroll out.
Mhm.
Thank you, thank you. Alice, biggest question is, who is the mastermind of Ninoy's assassination? From then, we can move on. Kasi nag-speculate, assume lang, in-stretch lang na si Marcos up to this day.
Yeah, that's true.
Intriga. Mm-mm.
Well, yeah, that's true. But ako, I understand that. Kasi even Cory made it clear that she would not listen to the new information that was being, and the three soldiers who were imprisoned, and later on, di ba, nakalabas din sila.
Yeah,
I think one died while in prison. They had a story to tell. Why would you say no?
I
Why?
know.
For me, even just out of sheer curiosity, my curiosity would kill me if I didn't at least hear that story. Tell me the story. Let me listen to that, and then I'll decide na, walang kwenta. But they did not bother. And that's what gets me. Why didn't you at least try to get the story? Ano ba naman mawawala? They were old. Some of them were already on their way to finishing their sentence. It would not have killed you to listen to their story. What was so scary about what they had to say? And then all mysterious deaths, di ba? The two of
Yeah,
them who were finally released, they died with
they died.
vehicular accidents. Pareho sila. That's not a coincidence. That's ridiculous. So
I know,
why?
I
What
know.
what secret is being kept from us? And the thing is, Corey acted like she was keeping a secret. And as you know, the a criminal act is people of the Philippines versus the accused. We had the right to know. These people, allegedly, they violated the laws of the country. So, are you saying that it's a state secret na may magugunaw ba ang mundo kung sinabi niyo sa amin yan?
Kung
O
ano talaga
hindi
ang
ganun?
kwento. Mhm, mhm.
Hmm. Ma-
Kasi the
So,
attorney, it's so baffling to think na dalawa kayong umupo sa highest office sa ating bansa and you didn't do anything to give the people the truth about your
yeah,
hero husband and father. 'Di ba?
yeah.
Parang yeah, tama ka Alice eh. Ang hirap din mag-move on from the narrative kapag hindi talaga natin alam kung ano ang totoong kwento. Thank you Alice.
So,
Thank you. Mhm. Brian, Attorney Trixie, what's your opinion regarding Sharon's blurting out na pag si Lenny ang naging Pangulo? Friends na nating Pinoy, ang NPA at Abu Sayyaf at Sharon Cuneta. My gosh, what a filthy mouth you have.
grabe. No, I think
What?
that to be fair to Sharon, the context was what she was actually saying is that Lenny is so well liked that even people like the Abu Sayyaf and the NPA are willing to be friends with her, and we're going to have peace and prosperity. Ganyan. Kumbaga, it's all she wasn't very good lang nga at explaining it. But my issue with that is that, of course, the NPA and the Abu Sayyaf are freaking criminals. Oh my God.
Criminals,
Diba? No, parang,
criminals.
oh, but
Yeah.
Lenny is so nice that these people will be willing to talk to her. Girl,
Wala nang terrorist. Sabi niya pa, wala nang terrorist. And the way she said
wala
it,
ng terorista.
it's it's
Oo.
really nakakagalit na Sharon Cuneta. My gosh.
Sa ano.
What's wrong with
But
you?
we have to be kind. I don't think she knows any better. So,
Uh,
kumbaga, she's not
I'm sorry,
speaking
attorney. I
malice.
cannot be. I hate the NPA. I hate the Abu Sayyaf. I just
Absolutely.
really cannot tie it together that you are going to come up with such statement. I mean,
Yeah, that's
it's
true. That's
horrible,
true.
Sharon
So,
Cuneta. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Parang, bakit di madugo ang sinasabi nilang revolusyon at di na lang pinangibabaw si Ferdinand E. Marcos na ang santadahang lakas, Batasya de Luisita at Mendiola Massacre, ang daming nagbuwis ng buhay. Kung mabubuti sila, sino ang diktador? Si Cory o Marcos? Sino ang magnanakaw? Si ina nila o mga Marcos?
yeah. I used to
Wow.
say them. Well, I still say it. Diba? Pagka humihirit sila, wag nang bumoto ng magnanakaw. Tama, wag tayong boboto ng magnanakaw ng boto. Kado yun.
Tama,
Yeah.
tama. Thank you,
Eh,
Carl.
how dangerous, di ba, to be so hypocritical. People
Yeah,
see right
the
through
height of hypocrisy ang si Lene Robredo, my
you.
gosh. We know your sin, darling. So,
So,
Rosemary
since
Malabon, Noy Yuan, I didn't apologize, sympathize regarding Manila siege, Hong Kong tourists held hostage. It was until 2018 President Duterte formally apologized. Proliferation of drugs, even Bureau of Customs, kidnapping of Chinese, laglag bala na iya things,
corrections,
people wrapped in plastic ala COVID.
yeah,
Dami,
totoo
ano?
yan.
Dami nito eh.
Maikli pa yung
Amongst other
listahan niya.
things,
There's more.
there is more. There is more. When I decided to run, Raquel, when I decided to run for president, I was so disappointed when almost everyone emotionally catapulted him to presidency. It is not bad to be emotional, but high emotions can affect logic. Buti na lang nagising na tayo sa kadramahan.
I like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Thank you,
uh,
Raquel. Totoo
forte
yan.
nila yung drama eh.
Mhm.
Amen.
Tash, Attorney Trixie, nakita mo ba kung merong kinalaman ng CIA and CPP-NPA sa narrative in 30 years na pinakain sa atin?
Ganito na yun, no? Do you see how pro-American, with the exception, of course, of Erap and Gloria, but we're so pro-Kano. Noy the most, I think. Even far more than FBR. So, uh, si Gloria, of course, she went to school there. She's classmates with Bill Clinton in Georgetown. But for the first part of her presidency, she towed the line. And then, when the truck driver got kidnapped, she couldn't anymore. So, bawi, 'di ba? So she had to change. She had to at some point you give up on the US line because you have to protect your people. And I like that about her, that she actually said no to the Americans. But it is tradition, surprisingly, for Philippine presidents to toe the US line. And
I
now
know.
with Duterte, right off the bat minura na si Barack Obama.
I know. But I was,
Oh my
I was really, ako talaga yung, whoa. But
God.
yeah.
So, I don't know if this guy is brilliant or I should just cringe. But it worked. I mean,
It worked.
He, it was a huge, huge risk, but it worked.
It
So oh
worked.
my gosh, diba? And then, you know what? I belatedly found out. I asked people in his inner circle who advised the president on his foreign policy. Because clearly, I see no hand of Sec Teddy Boy in this. We love him dearly, but we know he's very
We do, we do.
pro-American. And he would have continued with the Aquino pro-American stance, di ba? But
Yeah.
no, he did something uh, so completely sane. Kumbaga that we didn't realize that we had been nuts to just toe the line for so long. We have, because even di ba, the Americans intervened with Marcos because he started demanding rental for the US bases. He started and he did not extend parity rights. Remember, or he extended it maikli lang, which had been ruinous to us. The
Mm.
Americans had the same rights to our natural resources as citizens of the Philippines. And so much of our virgin forest cover, 80%, were decimated during the time of the Americans' parity rights. So all of that, the environmental destruction that you see, most of the trees that we find in the country, secondary growth, right? Um, 80%, they decimated that. They started all this mining, the ruinous kinds of mining, all sorts of things. They just extracted resources to the same, kumbaga, and because they had the money, they can do it far more than Filipino citizens could. And Marcos realized that, and he did not, well, he was fighting the extension of parity rights. It's so weird, parity rights.
I know,
And
I know.
so um, we know that they have a hand, but it's not the same. We're no longer in a Cold War, or well, the U.S. is trying to make it out to be that, and we also know the U.S. government works. Kumbaga, it's like again, we're on the movie set. Nina tayo yung basta audience. We see all the magic and we're thrilled by it. Now you see how it works, and we've blown the lid off that thing. It's not going to
Mhm.
be as easy anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not for lack of trying. It's just that they can't do the things they could have done before. And it's
Mhm, mhm,
yeah,
mhm,
people
mhm.
see through it already. We have gained a level of sophistication that narratives of good versus evil don't work anymore, and we know
Don't
that
work
the
anymore.
United States is willing to topple governments to further its own policies, to further its own
Exactly.
interests.
And
So
that's
it's
why we
not
have
really
Russia and
easy.
Ukraine. Ang taas-taas ng gasolina.
Yikes, yes. The Washington Post na yan, says this is the first sanctions-driven recession. If we're heading towards a recession, it's going to be sanctions-driven, not war-driven. It isn't the war that's driving us into a recession. It's the sanctions
Mhm.
that are
It's the
being imposed on
sanction.
Russia. Kaloka, di ba?
Sabi nga ni Professor Carlos nung kausap ko siya nung Thursday, sabi niya, kung ayaw na nila ibigay sa sinasanction ng American gasolina, nasa taas lang naman natin yung Russia, bigay na lang sa atin.
Yun.
Yun yun.
Yeah, we can buy actually the cheaper oil of Russia. It might work in our
I
favor.
know.
It should. We
But
have to look
kita,
into it.
Charm, can we push na manual counting of votes na lang?
No, we can't. Not right now. It has to be by, if we're going to change the mechanism of the electoral process, it has to be by law. That's why Senator Aimee tried to push for electoral reform. She's the head of the Committee on Electoral Reform, pero hindi siya nakalusot because, as you know, the Senate is a collegial body and none of her colleagues seem to be interested at all.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah, kasi
lonely
nandoon
battle,
nga yung
just
mga,
Senator Amy.
yeah, yung mga potential na mga mandaraya nandoon naman sa
Or
kanilang
possibly
lugar.
Nandayan.
Oo. Kaya Charm, I'm sorry, I don't think it's possible.
Not
But
gonna
we must
happen.
do our
No, not right
best.
now.
The term,
Yes.
Fred, the term laylayan they coined is the ultimate testament of their messianic complex.
Good. I agree.
Yeah, I
Messiah.
agree.
No, actually, well,
Also.
it's messianic, but at the same time, the flip side of the coin of a messianic complex is that they look down on us.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, damsel in distress tayo, completely useless until they come along and save us. We can't do
Yeah.
anything. They are here to rescue us.
I know.
As if
Kaya nga
we
nagkaroon si
could
Chris
do
Aquino ng
anything.
audacity na sumbatan tayo eh. Hindi ba?
No, we owe them democracy.
Yeah.
I feel
Can you
bad for
imagine
her
that?
health issues, but that was really a stupid
Yeah, yeah.
statement.
I wish her to recover only for her kids. Brian Cruz, double V, ha, ha, pero yung kapartner mo doon, nakakaloka siya ngayon. Shh,
Double
Brian,
B.
she's my friend. That was our TV, that's our radio
Oh,
show before,
oh, yeah,
Vivian and
yeah,
I.
yeah.
It's
Okay,
called
yeah, yeah,
Double V because
yeah,
she's
yeah, yeah.
Vivian Veles. Yeah.
She's
Ikaw
Vivian
naman,
Dallas.
Brian.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
I was trying to interview there. Eh. Sabi ko, kunin mo naman si Attorney Trixie that time. It was in 2017. So she's so busy, ganyan-ganyan, sabi ni Vivian. I was really dying to speak with you noon pan 2017, Attorney.
I
Yes, super
can.
thanks. Yes, super thanks to Attorney Trixie and Carambola team, Sirs Jonathan, Conrad, Larry Gadon, Tambayan teams, Attorney Nick Nangit, Glenn Chong, Ahmed Paglinawan. Oo, nakasama ko na dito. Kapag malaki ko lang at attorney sa iyo, I have you now. I had Attorney Glenn Chong, I had Attorney Nick Nangit.
Yeah.
Hindi ko pa rin nakukuha. Sige, Attorney Gadon. Ikaw, Attorney Gadon, ha,
Uh,
masyado ka maila. Anyway, pero
I'll give you
salamat
his
talaga
number.
attorney sa inyo. Salamat
Yeah.
talaga sa inyo, attorney.
No
Hi, Attorney
problem.
Trixie and Sir Peter. According to Sharon, ibabalik daw nila ang disente. Yet you see their supporters holding banners with sexual terms. That was, I don't know.
Hindi,
Hindi
sa
ko
akin,
maintindihan yan.
I don't have issues with kumbaga, the expression of one's own sexuality is protected speech. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I'm not a prude about these things. Rumors for Lenny. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I know.
They're shocking, yes, but for me, I will respect their freedom of expression. But for me, the more bastos thing is foisting on us a Lenny Robredo who can, I think, barely string two sentences together without falling over. And I think that's the biggest insult for me. I feel, to use a millennial term, offended that that we're willing to accept such low standards. Oh my God. What? How much experience in government service? The accident of becoming vice president for 6 years and the 3 year stint as congresswoman where her infrastructure project, you know, gumuho after what, a year, 2 years.
Yeah,
Ridiculous. She can't remember the first bill she filed.
I know. Sinabi ko nga, nung nakita ko yung interview na yun, she was struggling to remember that bit. Sabi ko, that is your creation. It's like forgetting your daughter's name.
Exactly. And it shows us that she really doesn't do the work herself.
She doesn't. She
Somebody
doesn't do the
does
work.
it. And that's going
Yeah,
to be the presidency if she wins. Knock on wood.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. So
She won't.
uh,
She won't.
that for me is far more bastos to
Yeah.
foist, than all of these sexual terms. I respect anybody who kumbaga, who recognizes, acknowledges their sexuality and are not embarrassed to discuss it. I don't I will not condemn women uh, who are sexually
Who
active
admits.
regardless of
Yeah.
I don't care. This is their own choice. But, you know, hindi ko choice si Lenny eh. Hindi ko choice to be subjected to such
Yeah,
low
yeah, yeah.
standards. And I don't like the idea that you're swooping in to rescue us. Thank you very much. The power
No
comes from
thanks. I'm
us.
drowning okay. I'm drowning okay. No
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Please do not interrupt my dying here. I don't care.
Eliza, Attorney Trixie, ano po masasabi niyo sa mga NPA at communists like kamatayan party list? What do you think the intentions?
They're not, kumbaga, the minimum, the bare minimum is they're really not for development. And
Yeah.
in the long run, I really don't think they're even about justice. Eh. A lot of their rhetoric is aimed at promoting dissatisfaction with government without actually addressing it. Kasi ang liit nila eh. Kumbaga, they're in Congress, they have all of the benefits and all that, but they have not, but they do very little. Kumbaga, what changes they make, sumasakay sila and all that, okay, fine. They do, make laws, fine, okay. Pero I don't think that they're really, kumbaga parang accomplishment yun eh. But their interest isn't really with actual development kasi they need us off balance. That's the narrative of the communists. They don't have enough to win. After 50 years, hindi ka makapanapanalo. The intention isn't even to win anymore. What are they going to do? Diba? They'll actually have to do
Yeah.
work. Pero kumikita
Mhm.
sila dito sa mga
Oh, yeah.
permit to campaign, extortion activities, and so on. And they get to participate in Congress. They get to be called congressmen and send their kids abroad to study at the expense of the people they've sent to
Of the
fight in
state.
the
Ginigisa
20s.
tayo sa sarili nating mantika, attorney, hindi ba?
Diba? So,
Napakasakit.
I think it's not even about ideology. I think these guys just found a common interest and are really selfish bastards trying to keep us from development.
Exactly.
Sorry,
Thank
some
you,
of them
Eliza.
are my friends. I disagree with them
Nako,
though.
attorney, this is a safe space. You can say everything you want. Call
Oo
it.
nga, no?
Attorney, do you believe that BBM will do revenge or do something wrong sa mga taong
No,
umalipusta sa mga parkos if he will win?
no. It's not
Thank
in
you.
his, it's not in his personality. If you've
Mhm.
met him, you've talked to him and all that. I mean, of course, I don't know him as well as people who have known him for years. How long have I known him? Since 2017, and we've a few occasions to talk to him. The nice thing about him is that he recognizes that when he was when he was fighting that battle that in 2017, the electoral protest,
Mhm.
we knew that he had time. Ito si Amy kasi had the program before us, yung 7 o'clock. So, pag wala siyang guest, ang guest niya si Senator Bongbong. Kami naman, mga panamantalang mga tao sa Karambola. Uy, nandito kayo pareho. Teka muna, huwag muna kayo umalis ng booth. Guest namin kayo. So, you end up, then Senator Amy eventually joined Karambola until she got busy na with the Senate. So you get to know
Uh,
them. And
yeah.
it's not in his personality. He's the one thing I know, he does have something to prove, but it isn't that. He isn't out to say to rectify history or anything like that. That's not it. It's not it.
Yeah.
He strikes me as one of those people who are looking for redemption. Uh, and this is what I don't like about the other side is they want to deny people like him redemption. And we have an entire justice system that's built around the concept of redemption. You have
Yeah.
a legal system that imposes punishments, but that punishment, once served, but you're supposed to take that person is supposed to have been reformed, is ready to rejoin society. But the hard fact of it is that when that person returns to society, nobody will be willing to give him a chance. 'Di ba?
Mhm.
That is
Mhm.
the conundrum of the legal system. That we build it around the idea that we can reform and we can redeem people, but we will not let them. Once they have committed a crime involving moral turpitude, there's certain doors that will be closed to you already. If you
Yeah.
commit this mistake with the internet, that mistake is there forever, and people can drag it out again and again and again and again. And BBM strikes me as the kind of person who has heard all of that being rammed in the head again and again and again. So it's one of two things: adapt or die, and he adapted. But this
Mm.
adaptation also means that you're not going to do the things that will tick people off either. You concentrate, eyes on the prize. Run for president, you're going to have to drag the country, if it has to be kicking and screaming, into the next stage of development, then so be it. But that's what he's going to do. Revenge is too petty. Eh. He's not even the
Yeah.
type to file a libel case, even if he has been grievously libeled again and again and again. And I know that feeling. Because I'm just too tamad to file libel cases. I'm not saying I will never file a libel case.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Yeah.
heard it all, from the and when you're lawyering for people as vicious as as some of those who are in the intel services, they'll spread rumors about you that would make even the most jaded prostitutes blush in shame. Yeah, yung ganon. When there wasn't
Ooh.
any, hindi pa ganon yung social media, the things that they would do to me, I didn't file cases against them because it was a war. I knew I entered into a battle, and asar talo yan eh. The best
Yeah.
revenge was to win my case, and I did that. So, nyek, 'di ba? So, and that's how I think he's going to handle it. That's why I find so much value in a BBM candidacy and a BBM
Exactly.
presidency. He takes us away from
Exactly.
that. Oh, there's also this thing that he's showing us. In my interview, he said this, and I was pleasantly surprised. Kumbaga, he was saying things like, we get so tied up in this may corruption. So yung mga anti-corruption, yung programa ko. So then you'll find, then people are always on the hunt for corruption instead of focusing their energies on actual development. We keep pulling down people then yung mga tipong, and it becomes a reason for the crab mentality to manifest itself, ha. Yung mga tipong, oh, you
Mm.
see this person, oh my gosh, ang dami niya nagagawa, ang dami niyang projects, hanapan niyo nga ng kaso yan. And I heard those exact same words from Noynoy Aquino, hanapan niyo nga yan si Angeles ng kaso.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. So, uh,
Yeah.
yung ganan, we should learn sige, yes, the fight against corruption, it has its place. But it shouldn't be the be all and end all of our existence. Kasi ang nangyayari is,
Exactly.
we get stuck in that. And I don't think it's an accident. Because if we're busy looking for things to find against certain people, the people who hold real power, they're getting away with it. Right? You notice that there's some people, no matter how grievous their wrongs, they don't seem to end up in jail.
I
They get
know.
away with it. But God forbid, nahampas lupa ka and you enter the crosshairs of some politician, you're going to get accused of uh, plunder or stealing or whatever, corruption, corruption, corruption. So it becomes something like a national sport, and it gives a lot of column inches to our journalists and airtime. May nahuli na naman tayong corruption, ganito, ganito. And then somebody gets elected because nangyari yung corruption na yon.
Yeah,
Somebody else gets
yeah.
elected. Somebody is the hero. But don't you see, it's like the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
You're
Vicious cycle
running
na
and
siya,
running.
attorney. Yeah.
You're not getting anywhere. Sure, we have to fight corruption, but it should be a regular thing. Yeah, but we
Yeah.
have investigative agencies, you have the civil service, you have people and all that. It's a system, it works. But if
Mm-hmm.
all our
Mm-hmm.
energies are focused on just that, then we're not getting anywhere. And in fact, we're
Yan nga, di ba,
discouraging
attorney?
people. Uh,
Yeah, di ba attorney, yun nga ang magandang ginawa ni President Duterte? Pinagsabay-sabay niya. Build, build, build. Anti-corruption, war on drugs. Criticize niyo lahat yan. Wala akong pakialam. But I'm going to do
Basta
everything in my power.
umaandar. Oo.
Basta
But
umaandar.
I've seen the damage that the specter of yung ganyang klaseng anti-corruption focus. Remember that we had properties like Bonifacio and all that who were sold, the basis conversion and all that. They were sold supposedly to modernize the military. It took Duterte to actually start bringing in the equipment, the new stuff, all of these, the Black Hawks and all that.
Mm-mm.
It took Duterte, but it was FVR who started the ball running on the AFP modernization. And part of the reason that took so long, what we it's a phenomenon called risk averse. We ended up making risk averse public officials. They're so afraid of the corruption. They're afraid to bid out projects. And I've seen this in the NCCA. I've seen this in the
Oh,
AFP.
okay.
I've seen this in other agencies. They're so afraid of the big projects because anti-corruption chuchu. Kasuhan ka ng mga ano. May matalo na bidder, kaso-kaso na. And if the media gets into it, it gets overhyped and you have a good story about corruption and no project. Do you see how we get stuck in
Yeah,
that narrative?
yeah,
How it
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
exactly a good thing. And my surprise is that BBM is one of the rare candidates who not only see that, he brought it out into the air and says, well, we'll still address corruption, but we're going to have to focus on our development, on our agriculture, and on making us, on making agricultural sustainable in this country, a more rational foreign policy, and all of that. He's talking about these things and taking the narrative away from fighting corruption.
Yes,
We
yes,
will
yes.
always fight corruption. It's part of the
Always,
duties of
always.
government. But it's not going to be the only story.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
Duterte had like 10 million things going on all at the same time.
All
Because
at
he
the
had
same
all these
time.
boxes in his head. And all of them
Yeah,
were working. It's all the other presidents, parang ano, napipilay sila, with the exception of GMA. They get stuck in this, we're fighting corruption. Kung walang corrupt, walang mahirap, and you don't get anything else done. In
yeah,
fact, you
yeah,
reverse our development. The MRT broke down. Everything, the gains that we made, it's like being kicked back into the Stone Age because of that
yeah,
president.
yeah. At hindi sila nahihiya na nangyayari yun sa bansa. That was
So,
unthinkable. Thank you, Tolits. Marites Bichara del Rosario. Si BBM daw is a thief. Pero ang Pinklawan, they create narrative with too much lies. Ergo, once you lie, you are as good as a thief. Tama.
di ba? Yeah.
Tama. Thank
Anong
you,
gusto mo? Yung
Marites.
alleged magnanakaw o yung alleged magnanakaw ng boto?
Aha. Sir, Sir Peter, when your guest is a saint, kulang ang isa o dalawang oras na online interview, she can teach and explain for hours. She can even write a book about what's happening if she is not professionally working. Thank you sa inyo, mga ulirang Pilipino. Thank you, Karen, for appreciating us. Thank you. And we really appreciate Attorney Trixie, really. At
You
salamat,
know where
Karen.
that sainthood comes from? You know that kwento? Like, they were
Yeah.
asking me to run for senator. And I said, no, I'm running for sainthood. So to get
Oh, okay.
out of so that's that's the insider joke.
Okay, okay. But kaya pala when your guest is a saint. Okay. I was trying to not really focus on that, but meron palang inside joke yun sa inyo. Chat. President was interviewed by Pastor Kibuloy. It looked like he didn't know what was going on in Comelec, especially the Rappler MOU. Do these Comelec unfairness, incompetence really reach Duterte?
I think that we underestimate the capability of the president to jump over the cordon sanitaire. And there is
Yeah.
one, we can't deny that. But there's certain things that he has focused on. Halimbawa, some things got away from him. Water issue, halimbawa, water
Mm.
concessionaires, that kind of got away from him. But tax reform did not. Foreign policy did not. He, by the way, is the author, the sole author of our foreign policy. That was him
Yes. That was him.
alone, nobody
Yeah.
else. Uh,
Yes.
Tax reform, I kept looking for the person who was advising him. As it turns out, he got a little bit of advice from accountants, but in the end, Duterte, tax
Siya.
reform. I underestimated him, I have to confess, because I know that he's very good in criminal law, having been a prosecutor. I underestimated his understanding of tax law because, that tax law is like a world of its own. It's freaky.
Uh-huh.
The same way
Uh-huh.
international law is a world of its own. So um, I think the president is aware, at least especially with the Rappler thing. Uh,
Yeah.
he will let you know what he wants you to know. Yung mga kunwari nadulas siya, yung mga ganon, don't let him fool you for 1 second. That's not true. Diba? Yung he pretends to be this befuddled probinsyano na, ay, nasabi ko pala yun. Ay, napamura ako. Parang ganon. Of
Oh,
course not. He intended that the whole time. Kung sa
yeah,
ngayon
yeah, yeah.
naniniwala pa rin kayo dun sa mga ganon, no, that's BS. There are some things that he admits got away from him because he
Mhm.
doesn't have perfect people around him. They're also
Yeah.
susceptible to their own weaknesses, so he has to make up for a lot of that. But don't underestimate his capability. And there's some people that he doesn't remove because there are things that depend on that. We just can't see it right now, but
Mhm.
it's there. It's there.
It's
There,
there. It's
there,
there.
there. It's like the kid with his finger in the dike. You don't see the value of the finger in the dike. You'll see it
Yeah.
only when it's taken out. So maybe one of these days when he's no longer president will understand. It doesn't mean that they have sinned any less. Kumbaga, the people that
Yeah.
we want
Yeah.
removed doesn't mean that they're not corrupt, that the stories aren't true. But the removing, that's a story on its own, and I'm willing to give the president the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Benefit of the doubt. Ako,
Yeah.
I love, I'm beginning to love BBM, but para I'm not yet ready to let go of President Duterte. Lutang,
I'm never going to be ready to let him go.
di ba?
I,
Lutang din si
I knew
Shao.
this years ago. I mean, I know that because by law we have to have a new president. Pero alam mo yan,
Uh,
yung
I
I'm
know.
having separation anxiety.
Separation anxiety.
Hindi pa
Exactly.
nagsa-start. Di ba? Di ba? I'm trying even not to think about it. Alam mo yun?
I know.
Na
Me too.
I
Me too.
might
Me too.
I might end up crying and say, oh my gosh. No,
There
no,
is
no,
going
I
to be a
can't.
lot of tears in the transition. I swear. There is going to
Ngayon
be a
pala,
lot
he's
of
still there
tears.
and I already miss him.
I
Diba?
know.
And I even understand yung meron siyang konting tampo na he doesn't get to choose his successor. The
Yeah.
kumbaga, the meanest, orneriest, best president that we've ever had, and we couldn't even give him that. We can't. We really can't.
We
The
can. We
politics of
can.
the people around him, that's
Yeah.
his weakness. So,
Yeah.
but I hope my hope is that he always will remember that we love him. We love him continuously, long into retirement, until the last day. We will always love this guy. There's nothing that
Yes.
that you can tell me about the Duterte administration that will change my mind about this person. I don't care how many
Exactly.
stories of corruption you're going to tell me. This guy changed things for us. It's the
Exactly.
turning point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Edna, PRRD greatest legacies, build, 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 NTFL-CAC, and war on drugs. NTFL-CAC dapat yan institutionalize.
Hindi dapat siya task force. Pero ako, I disagree. Well, yes, those are the obvious choices, but I would include in that tertiary education, the anti-poverty programs.
Oh
The
yeah. The barangay
because
developments.
hindi kasi nila, these aren't sexy projects and they don't give
Mhm.
you returns right away. But this is with an eye to the future. Education, universal healthcare, the 4 Ps, the continuing concern for the eradication of absolute poverty.
Mhm.
It's a page he took from China. China was able to eradicate absolute poverty. It took them 20 years, but they did it. The president set that in motion. He's the first
Mm.
president to move things, and we don't appreciate it as much as we should. But he also recognized the contribution towards poverty of the insurgencies. That's why it was important for him, yung peace talks with the secessionist movements and the eradication of the communist terrorist groups, because the intention of these people is to keep those who are far away from the cities, to keep them in a state of poverty. They have no.
Poverty.
He
Yes.
recognized the factors that contribute to poverty and addressed every single one. It's not going to be felt right now, but it will
Yeah,
be. He's breaking the back of poverty.
yeah.
Kumbaga, we don't even appreciate it right now. But my gosh, once you realize what he has done, this guy should be put on a pedestal, a very tall one. Kumbaga, the next president has very big shoes to fill.
BBM, are you
To
ready for this?
he, he
Yeah,
has no
yeah.
choice.
He has no
He
choice.
has
He
to
has
be.
no choice.
Yeah, yeah.
Rudolph, ano po masasabi ninyo sa gustong mangyari ni Drilon? Does he still matter? Na magsanib puwersa na lang daw po sana ang mga mabababa ang rate. Baka si Isko or Lenny na lang ang patakbuhin nila, isa na lang kakalabanin si BBM. How pathetic is that?
I think it's too late. Once BBM started clocking in at over 50%, tapos na sila.
Tapos
Na
na.
kahit magsanib puwersa silang lahat, it's not gonna matter. It's not.
Mhm.
Wala na.
Okay, thanks,
Right?
Rudolph. Romel Nuke, Attorney Trixie and Sir Peter, please more of this tandem and platform of tandem talaga, attorney. Are you ready?
Do you wish? Oh my gosh.
Can we bring back utilities, water, electricity, toll fees to government control?
It
Hi, Rene.
requires immense political will. And
Mhm.
you know why it needs political will? It needs a president na tututok dyan and a Congress who's willing to cooperate. So I want it. I want it bad. But I
Yeah.
also realize the kind of work that it's going to take to bring everything back. Remember that
Mhm.
these are milking cows for the oligarchs that
For the
hold them.
oligarchs.
They're not going to give it up without a fight. So expect a fight. And these people don't fight fair. Remember when the Inquirer lost their advertising because of ERAP? They helped topple ERAP. That's how vicious these people are. So we need somebody with immense political will and the capability to satisfy even the most jaded of the oligarchs. You'll
Mhm.
need a political genius for that one. Otherwise, we'll
Mhm.
have to take it slow. We'll eventually bring it back. But the political reality is that we're going to have to fight very powerful people to get that. It can be done.
Wow.
Not
It can
saying
be
no.
done. It's not like it's not going to be
Mm.
accomplished, but it can
Yeah.
be. Is it true that VP Lenny is one of the stockholders ng Meralco? Talaga?
I, I,
Yaman?
I, I don't know
Hindi
this.
namin
It's
alam yan, ha?
possible. It's
Bago yan,
possible.
charm.
I think
After
I've
P-
heard that rumor, but I don't have facts about it.
she get the money, I thought she's poor.
Oh. No, she's
After
not.
PG,
Not by a long shot.
uh, after PGMA's more independent stance, I noticed more coup plots with Manila Pen, 2006 standoff, and Hello Garci. It became rocky for her.
Hmm. I heard. Well, speaking as one of those who were on the other side, I actually lawyered for all of that. Manila
Uh-huh.
Pen, 2006. Kulang pa yan. Awkward. So I had all
Ukod.
three cases. So I had filed on Jason Aquino, uh, the, uh, the group of Danny Lim, at Ruben Ginobay, Colonel Ginobay, the hero of Lamitan. I had the hero of Central Mindanao. All of these were heroes. These are
Mhm.
the decorated officers and men. So, and I can attest to the fact that there was no U.S. money coming into them. I'm not sure about Oakwood. Posible pa yung kina Sunny Trillanes. But these
Ay,
ones,
parang.
Manila Pen and Standoff, medyo malabo yun. Remember when they were trying to topple Duterte in the early part of his, there were rumors about how allegedly daw some personnel of the U.S. Embassy allowed the use of diplomatic pouches to bring in material for the endeavor. Allegedly. That's a rumor. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I half believe it.
But, of course, they
Totally
lost to
believe
the
it. But
people. Hindi ba, attorney? They lost to the people. Tayo yun eh. Hindi nila
yeah,
tayo
exactly.
kaya eh. Bukod sa matatag si President Duterte, the people
Mm,
are behind him. So thank you,
mm.
Frank. Thank you, Frank.
A for
At
effort.
Kicks, hi Kicks! Ito si Kicks, nakakatawa to eh. Pogi daw siya eh. Attorney, your thoughts sa mga cases against Marcoses with regards to ill-gotten wealth. Correct me if I'm wrong po. All cases po ba are civil cases and not criminal cases na dapat ma-prove yung guilt nila beyond reasonable doubt? Kindly explain civil versus criminal case. Hi, Sir Peter. I'm an avid follower from Norway. Hello. Yes, Kicks. Hi, Attorney Trixie. Team replay po kami ng karambola dito sa work. Best dressed radio host ka talaga. Wow naman.
Even if you only see me from the waist up, no? So, okay, criminal and civil cases. Most of the cases are criminal, but when they got home, they were now susceptible to criminal. Most of the cases are civil, but when they got home, the cases, there were criminal cases that were filed. For BBM, I understand there was at least one, and that has been dismissed. So, wala, kumbaga not guilty, dismissed.
Mm,
Senator Amy had one also that was dismissed. Mrs. Marcos had several. Most of them have been dismissed except for the two. One, both of them are in the Sandigan Bayan, and they are both on appeal. So one case involves 7 counts, the other one something like 2 or 3 counts. So, but otherwise, all the other criminal cases have been dismissed. Now, Ferdinand Marcos never had a criminal case filed against him because they wouldn't allow him home. So, and diba, this is what I was saying that Cory did not want to even consider letting the Marcoses come home, even if it was to face criminal cases.
to
In fact,
face, yeah.
Ferdinand Marcos asked for that. Let me come home. You can file the criminal. You can put me in jail. I will face my cases. But let me come home. For Cory, she was afraid that it would be payback time because there are a lot of people still loyal. And she could have faced the very real possibility of the solid North seceding from the Republic. Di ba? There were these concerns. I'm not kidding. They were certainly
Yeah,
in
yeah.
her mind during that time. So Ferdinand Marcos never had a criminal case. Now, what they're arguing is that the ill-gotten wealth cases and for future cases are as good as criminal cases kasi it proves that the money that they had or that was taken by the PCGG didn't belong to them. And so if it didn't belong to them, the conclusion is that it belonged to the people and therefore they stole it from the people. But that's not how it goes. It just says that you cannot explain where this money came from. So we have a law that allows the forfeiture of property that is accumulated in excess of what you could have probably earned as a public official. Now that's part of, I think that was one of those, the forfeiture cases, because that's what it was. So yun. They had too much money. It was not sufficiently explained by the salaries, accumulated salaries of both Ferdinand and Imelda when they were public officers. So hindi aabot. So the excess, the government can take that. Unfortunately, it seems to me that only the Marcoses were accused of these.
Mm,
Subsequent government officials can also be susceptible to this, but nobody has ever had a case filed against them subsequent to the Marcoses. Wouldn't you? I think this is the more interesting aspect. Now,
yeah.
there's no doubt that the interest of government was to see that the Marcoses are at least guilty of, well, not guilty, you can't be guilty in a criminal case. Just, you lose. But
Mm,
they needed to have that high moral ground. But, if we wanted to, we could always ask, well, how come you gained so much during your term when you had no other source of income? Okay, here's my question, Noynoy Aquino. Okay, heredero ka, so you'll factor that in, but what you earned during your stint as congressman, senator, and then later on as president, can you explain the total amount of your wealth and all that? People keep saying he wasn't corrupt. Well, of course, you can say that because no case had actually been filed.
yeah.
But then I wonder,
Mm,
was he even smart enough to get out of bed without help and much more try to commit a crime, diba? So I
correct,
don't know.
correct.
He barely held
Yeah.
it together as president. So when you say that he wasn't corrupt, he didn't commit a crime. Well, that's because there weren't enough brains to rub two stones together. So why even
So,
try? I mean, when it comes to Noynoy Aquino, sumakalangit na.
well, we cannot, sabi mo nga kanina, this is history and we need to talk about it.
You have
Bogs,
to talk
how can
about.
we guard the counting of votes? Is it possible that each party representative could watch the VCM? Parang pwede yun eh, di ba,
Uh,
attorney?
Merong watchers naman ang political parties. The rule on watchers hasn't changed. But the counting of votes happens inside the machine. So,
Mm-hmm.
ang babantayan kasi, um, yung transmission of votes.
Transmission.
That's what, you know. So if you have a record of how many votes have been counted at the precinct, we make sure that what has been transmitted is the same number. Yun lang naman yan.
Exactly. Bogs, kung babalikan mo yung guest namin si Attorney Glenn Chong few weeks back,
Yun. Oh,
may
yan si Glenn.
magandang explanation si Attorney Glenn Chong dyan. Balikan mo, Bogs, yung episode na yon and maririnig mo doon yung mga katanungan mo na yan. Thank you,
Yeah.
Bogs. Paul, hello, Attorney. Do you think mapapababa ang numbers ni BBM or will he retain these numbers up to election?
It's going to take a lot to reverse that. Yeah, Lenny Robredo talks about momentum. It's because it's BBM who has momentum. You know, actually, I thought that after he got to 51%, magre-relax na, di ba? Will feel invincible. Hi,
Mm.
umangat pa yung numbers.
Oo
So, oh
nga
my
eh.
gosh, this is unprecedented. So,
Unprecedented. Parang for
so
the first time,
they,
attorney, magkakaroon tayo ng majority president, eh, no?
mm, mm.
Oo,
But
oo.
yun nga, the thing that they fail to recognize, kasi bakbak pa rin sila ng bakbak kay BBM, low-key na lang yung pagbabakbak. The Philippine Star said something like, in a rare swipe at her opponent. Really? In a rare swipe? Lenny Robredo is running precisely para tablayin si BBM. Rare swipe ba yan? So,
Yeah,
but low key, her followers or minions are still bashing BBM. But they're, kumbaga, barking up the wrong tree. The reason for such momentum on the part of BBM isn't so much BBM himself, although there is that, because he's this oh shucks nice guy. Ito yun yung image niya. And
yeah,
a lot, and that's like 90% true, by the way. If there's a dark side, it's so hidden that nobody's ever seen it. But um, it isn't so much BBM or even the Marcos name. Let's not kid ourselves. It's the abject
yeah,
failure of the Aquino administration and the way the libs tried to destroy Duterte, one of the most insanely popular presidents in the
exactly.
ever in the
Ever.
country. And some
Yeah,
were presidents during wartime where it's so easy to be pro-president. He is even far more popular than that. So
yeah.
trying to bash a president that popular, this requires a new level of stupidity unheard of before.
And they
So,
have it. Exact. 'Di ba? Ako nga sinasabi ko nakakapanghinayang ito si Lenny. What a waste of space because she could have just worked with President Duterte and earn her popularity and then win this election. Hindi ba, attorney?
correct. Oh,
She
work
could have
with
just
it.
done that, but she chose to be the evil to the goodness of President Duterte.
Like
Wow.
I said, it's the arrogance of their narrative. They know better
Exactly.
than us. So,
Yeah.
because Duterte is popular and all of us like Duterte, and they're saying, no, he's a bad guy, what they're saying is that there's no Vox Populi Vox Day. The Vox Liberal only. Vox Liberal Vox Day. They know better than us. They know better than the popular vote. They are willing to impose their know-it-all better selves than over that of the electorate. So
Yeah.
that's diba? That's the primary reason Lenny Robredo is never
Yeah.
going to get my vote.
Yeah. The arrogance worked against them.
Guns, diba?
Attorney Trixie, Prof. Carlos posted that Russia and China want to go back in gold-backed currency, where I commented about. It is well documented that President Marcos has much gold deposits shown in GMA through Mel Chanco disclosed by Madam Imelda Marcos. Now that BBM appears to be winning, is there a coincidence? Your thoughts on that? Can you further expound on this Marcos gold? Thanks, attorney.
My discussions with the when they still had the patience to discuss. Nakakaubos eh. Then, sa totoo lang, I feel na si BBM natutuyuan na. When it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah.
the questions, and always this question will pop up. The gold, the gold, the gold. All right. Um, both Senator Aimee and Senator Bongbong have denied the existence of it. Well, yung mga tipo, well, if you can find it, sure, by
Yeah,
all means,
inyo na.
knock
Sabi
yourself
nga ni
out. Yun
BBM,
yung
di ba?
ano, yun
Pag
yung
may nakita kayo,
attitude.
inyo na. Yeah.
Now, why is there a difference between what Mrs. Marcos is saying and what the kids are saying? Well, it's possible that only Mrs. Marcos knows about it and the kids have no idea. That's one theory. And the other theory is that Mrs. Marcos has a talent for myth making. She had to explain why all this fabulous wealth. She had to steer the narrative away from the magnanakaw kayo to matagal na kaming mayaman. We have gold.
Hmm.
Diba? Regardless of which story is true, she was very successful at it. And then a lot of people during the time that Ferdinand Marcos was president, and even later on when they tried to turn her into a joke with 4,000 pairs of shoes, you she sometimes sounds out of this world, talking about uh the Philippines being the center of the universe and all of that. And but the fact was, you couldn't tell sometimes whether she was being facetious. She was actually, you know, this huge cosmic playing this huge cosmic joke on you, and nobody knew it but her, or that she was really spinning this myth that made them larger than life. And let's face it, up to now, she still is larger than
She
life.
still
She's in
is.
her 90s, and people still look at her with, oh. Diba? You still see the traces of that gorgeousness in her. Then, my gosh, the pictures floating around the internet of her in a bathing suit puts me to shame.
I
I mean,
know. I know.
never even a fraction of that hotness. Diba? Crap. And this was what? Long before hotness was even a concept. But,
Exactly.
diba, there's that eh. So I don't put much stock in it because I know the talent for me of Mrs. Marcos for spinning these myths, and for the fact that she was steering the narrative na away from the magnanakaw kayo, you have all this money because you stole it from the government. She just counters it with, we have all this money because we've always had this gold. Yun. And excuse me, hindi kami hampas lupa. Cash, 'di ba? Gold. No less. And she never talked about the chests and chests of jewelry that the PCGG found in Malacanang. She doesn't talk
Uh,
about that because it's too pedestrian. No, she had gold. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for me, it's more like, oh, okay, Mrs. Marcos was at it again. And, she could take a story that's partly true and turn it into, the stuff of legend. I mean, Malakas at
Yeah,
Maganda wasn't an accident. That
yeah.
she had
Do you remember
this
that painting
talent.
of them? Malakas at Paganda? Do you remember
Yeah, di
that?
ba? Yeah, yeah.
Him and
Then,
Ferdinand. Her
not
and
an
Ferdinand.
accident.
Yeah. Attorney Trixie, do you think people like Faeldon was a mole absorbing the dirty jobs to expose the whole of the bureau he heads? Darwin,
Which bureau? Okay.
which bureau?
Customs, I assume. No, Nick Faldon is one of the good guys. Okay. And President Duterte trusts him to this day. But I think that in some instances, he was just really in over his head. You're trying to head a bureaucracy of people who had gotten so used to a certain level, a certain lifestyle, and a certain ease of maintaining that lifestyle, that somebody who comes in who's really serious about shaking things up and cleaning things up is certainly not going to be a friend under any
Hmm.
circumstances. So it's basically, he was sent in there alone with very little idea of how things worked in there. He was more in his element in the Bureau of Corrections, but in that one, even without making a mistake, talagang they forced him out. Do you know that when it came to the interpretation of the law, I forgot the name of the law, where you get credits for good behavior, the forgot the name of the law. Holy cow, senior moment. But uh, he did it right, and to this day, they can't file any case against him. because he interpreted the law correctly, according to the law and according to the rules. It had always been the interpretation of that law. And then nagkaroon ng Senate investigation. Coincidentally, siya yung head. He did not do anything wrong. He did he was well advised. They have good lawyers in Bucor, and it just so happened that the warden and all of that, they were applying the credits to notorious killers, but nothing in the law says you can't apply it to these people. And so, because there's a concept called
Mm.
equal protection, you have to come up with a reason why it should not be applied to them when the law made no such distinction. So in that instance, he did all the right things, but really it was just politics. It was a dirty game. They played dirty in the Senate. That's why, the president is saying, let's vote in new people. We can't have the same old
Yeah,
story
yeah,
that the Senate will go after a good guy because things weren't
yeah.
working in their favor for personal
You will see
reasons.
this happening with family attorney, the abuse that Gordon's
Mhm.
been doing with Mr. Ong. It's really unbelievable
Who's
how
still
they
in
can
jail,
manage
by the way.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still in jail. Imagine that. Brian,
Mhm.
Rowena Gonzon advocating pwede through party list while she's belittling the sector through Ngiwi challenge. Any thoughts? Oo.
Okay, I personally know Bing Wanzon. And then, I have this to say about her. For
Mm,
the longest time, she did help out in social justice issues.
okay.
She helps in yung mga free legal aid and all of that. I mean, she's no pushover. She's really a very very good lawyer. I don't know. She wasn't my professor or anything, but she could teach very well. But she's a good lawyer. She put in the hours. She worked in, and she helped with NGOs, and anak ng asyendero yan, as she says.
Mm.
But she did help out. Um, I think that at some point,
So
however,
where did
when
everything go wrong?
but she's also this hugely politically incorrect person, and it's
I
really just her
know.
entire personality. Now, in some people like President Duterte, it is endearing, but there's some people who just can't do political incorrectness and get away with it. So in the case of Combing Guanzon, she can't. Okay, she can't just do it. Her humor is too heavy-handed. This is she can't play the role of befuddled provinciano like the president and
Yeah.
can get away with it. She's
She looks
incredibly
like she lost a screw, attorney. I swear. Right? And then that's what everybody is seeing right now. She's lost it. It's like
but she
ako at
doesn't care.
I know.
That's
Baka
the
nga
thing.
attorney, I was criticized by my friend na naawa ka talaga diyan. Sabi ko because I feel pity for her because I even called her poor soul because why are you doing this to yourself? I mean, why?
Fortunate
Where is
souls.
unfortunate, really unfortunate for somebody now that ikinonfirm mo pa how brilliant she is.
She
Oh my
really is.
gosh.
She's a very
Yeah.
good lawyer.
So,
Well, you know how they say that there's a fine line between genius and insanity.
okay. Okay.
There's
So
some
she
people,
crossed the line.
but her insanity goes into political incorrectness rather than actual,
Uh,
you know, insanity. And we can, because I don't really fault people for not sharing my own political views. If you
of
don't
course.
believe the same way as I do, by all means. And I expect her also to fight for it, because she has always fought for what she thought was right, even before. Uh, just I find it that she knows. I think she knows perfectly well how ridiculous she sometimes sounds, and she just doesn't care.
Yeah,
Ganun
yeah,
lang
yeah.
yan.
She should
So,
start caring. She should start
she
caring.
should.
She should start caring, attorney, really.
I
For
mean,
the sake of,
she, of anybody's sanity. No, but I think
Oo.
it's like this. It's more like, um, she says something outrageous and people lose their heads, and for her that's a win no matter how ridiculous she sounds. So
Yeah, yeah.
aha, made you react, di ba? Yung mga
Yeah,
tipo, it's
yeah.
like, you got shit on your shoe and look na, made you look, parang ganon, yun siya. Siya yung
Yeah,
siya,
yeah, yeah.
made you look, made you react, ganon. So
Uh-huh,
that's
uh-huh.
the that's the reasoning behind all of these, he
Mhm,
just
mhm.
doesn't care. Sutil din yan.
Sutil, sutil.
But
Si Lenlen, ina ng laging lutang. Mother of perpetual floating. Ikaw, Tino, ah.
tapos ang symbol niya yung balloon.
I know. Oh, yeah.
Di ba lahat ng saints merong mga seagulls, merong symbols, merong
Oo.
lily, merong kanya yung lobo. Mother
Lobo.
perpetual.
Yeah.
One of these days,
Ellie,
somewhere.
did you both think that when Duterte uttered criticism against BBM is actually schemes against those who are false loyal to him and those who are against him? Anong take mo dyan, attorney?
I really don't like to second guess the president when it
I
comes
know,
to
me
this.
too eh.
Ganito yan eh. The president is a politician. So he will do certain things sometimes. There might be a different end to it than what is obvious. But I think he was showing his loyalty to certain people around him. Na, ito ha, nutulungan kita. Ito yung ginagawa ko. Yan. But I also know that he stopped. Na, meron siyang dalawang criticism, um, weak, chuchu, mga ganyan. And then after
Mm,
those two blasts, suddenly no
tapos
more.
na.
No more criticism. Wala na.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think that comment about Sana Abogado was even aimed at him. He was simply
Mm,
talking about how much easier it would be if you're a president and you're a lawyer and you don't need to rely on other people to tell you what the law is. So, uh, I think it was more like he was telling the people around him that, okay, I'm supportive of you. See, I'm showing you how supportive I am. I'm doing this, but you've seen the president. You've heard him bash other people, like you've heard him bash Lenny, and
mm,
yung mga ganon, you've heard him bash Rappler. Pia Ranyada
yeah,
got the brunt of it, but
yeah.
the ones that he fired against BBM, they didn't even sound sincere. Parang,
Actually.
eto ha, panoorin mo, papakita ko sa'yo. Pakitang tao. We know what he's like, di ba?
I
When he's
know,
against somebody,
exactly.
the strings of PI are just turn the air blue. And he doesn't care. But this one,
Yeah,
and the president has good comedic timing. This one fell flat. It's like he didn't
yeah.
care whether people would accept it or not. He was saying it for the sake of saying it.
Exactly. That's what I thought too,
Dumaan sa
Eli.
ilong.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, parang, kasi there was so much care eh. When he said that
Mm.
carelessness, there was still care. Parang hindi niya talaga,
Parang,
he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it at
yeah,
all.
parang ganon.
Uh-huh,
Parang
uh-huh.
napipilitan lang ng partido.
Oo,
I mean, that
oo,
was
oo.
my take on it. Parang, okay, PDP laban, watch.
Oh,
Ito,
and then nothing happened
kaibigan
to that
natin ito.
somebody who's supposed to be their one. And
Yeah,
then, tingnan niyo, wala nangyari. Tigilan
okay
na
na.
natin to.
So, I did my best.
Parang gano'n eh, di ba, attorney?
Tumulong na ako. Yan. But at the same time, he's still also sending a signal na, lintek, pinipinilit niyo ako ha. Parang may
Oo.
ganun na, ano eh.
Yeah.
Parang,
And that's why when people who have thousands of followers also reacted the way they did, para ako naman, teka muna, hindi niyo naman lang binigyan ng pagkakataon yung tao na, hindi niyo man lang siya binigyan ng pagkakataon na tingnan niyo maigi yung ginawa niya, you reacted immediately. But I can't blame them. Siyempre,
yeah.
bata nila yung pinoprotektahan nila. At
Mm-hmm.
on that note, maraming salamat mga ka-3PM sa mga comments at tanong ninyo at sa ating usapan ngayong gabi. And attorney, please
Yeah.
give us your last words on our subject, maneuvering the
Yeah.
narrative on social media?
Well, the we lucked out. We lucked out that we have opponents who aren't the brightest bulbs on the tree. Not the sharpest tools in the shed either. But it would be dangerous to underestimate their, how do you call this, tenacity. Yeah, it's like,
Mhm.
Trillanes is with them. And Trillanes is this little attack dog with more, how do you call this, more guts than brains. And
Mhm.
that's what they are. But they're losing a lot. If they lose this electoral contest, it's the end of their political careers, a lot of them. It's the end of their party. It'll take a while to be able to resurrect that, and people's memories are long. So they have a lot to lose. We have to expect that they will do things like this, manipulate the narrative, gaslighting. Really, seriously, 70,000 talaga. And
Mm.
if it was a rational number, like 40, even if the capacity is still a lot less than that, posible pang,
Uh-huh.
wait, wow, naka 40,000 sila. Maiisip mo ng ganon. And then the buses, of course,
Yeah.
di ba? Plus, the low-key bashing pa rin, the continuous bashing and the holier than thou attitudes. All of these are part of their attempts to dictate the narrative. The Our good luck also is that they haven't read the signs. They still think that they're better than us. They still think that the weird part about it is that so many intelligent people sided with Duterte, and so many intelligent people are siding with BBM. So the brain power, uh, uh, on their end, I mean, really, if they choose Lenny as their president,
Exactly.
not only would I question the intelligence, but also the sanity. But, di ba? Um,
Yeah.
so we are extremely lucky. Some people might call this destiny. But the President Duterte is a destiny president. Very clear yan. How could you break all of these years of tradition of us making stupid, stupid people occupy the highest office in the land? I mean, it's a proud tradition. Then suddenly you put in this provinciano who doesn't fit any mold whatsoever,
Mm.
who suddenly made it acceptable to say PI on live television. Yeah. And then now you have somebody who, under other circumstances, would not even get to win as senator. And here he is, having won several terms as senator, now running as president of the country with tags like anak ng diktador, magnanakaw, hindi nakatapos, and all of that. All of these things being thrown at him. And he's almost at the level of the Teflon of Duterte. Uh, it just slides off. It's not sticking. So,
Mhm.
but in spite of all that, the vigilance is still required.
Of
You
course.
remember that it took so many years for us to realize that, oops, there's another story pala dun sa EDSA. My bad to not even ask about it. Or even if the narrative had already been there, it's so buried deep in whatever scholarly archives, nobody has ever seen it. So we need to still be careful, and we need to listen to the leaders, listen to the candidate. If he's worried about something, then we worry about that. We also have to manage our desire for clean and honest elections with with protecting the electoral system so that we don't lose faith in it. We want people to vote. Our hedge against the cheating machinery is to make the candidate win by the biggest margin possible. And then it would be unlikely that he would even that they would even attempt to cheat him at a level that had not been seen before. We're seeing him in clock in numbers that will establish him as a majority president. I mean, they can cheat, but the best that they can do is shave off what, 6 million votes from what looks like he's going to have 40, 50 million votes.
Uh-huh.
Diba? Registered voters are numbering at what, 70
64?
million or thereabouts.
64? Yeah, thereabout. Yeah.
Yeah, they're about 60 plus million. So, and if the surveys will reflect the number of votes cast, he's going to get something like what, more than 30 million, 40 million votes. You're not,
Yes, yes.
and if Comelec has, or if Smartmatic can only play around with 6 to 8 million votes, then we just have to keep slugging away. Make sure that you hold on. Make sure that that the soft votes get hardened into solid votes.
Yes.
That's our job, and to make sure that the other side never gains control of the narrative. I must confess, when I first saw this, wow, she's filling up stadiums, and then after a while, the story started trickling in. It wasn't full. That- then the Photoshop magic,
There's
and then the
sibuyas.
balloons, and then the buses, the sibuyas, and then suddenly, they shot themselves in the foot. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh!
yeah.
So those are the things we have to look out for. Again, another streak of good luck is how they underestimate our intelligence. The, we should be
Exactly.
glad. It's
We
insulting,
should be
but on the
glad. We
other
should be
hand, we should
glad.
be glad because they're not trying as hard as they should be doing. Or maybe they've gotten so soft they're incapable. Wala na silang ano
Yeah.
eh. It's like Trillanes being in the Senate for so long. He thinks it's easy now. He thinks now, no, with he has people at his command. He doesn't have a command. He never did. But
Never did.
he got used to the idea that he did. The
Uh-huh,
danger
uh-huh.
is that we should start. The other danger is we should not drink our own Kool Aid. We have to, accept what is already there. If the narrative of Ferdinand Senior is there, we can actually accept that whole thing because it doesn't affect BBM. What?
Exactly.
Transmissible sa DNA yung pagnanakaw? Ganun ba yon? I mean, even the most irrational of us knows that you cannot inherit that. So,
Yeah.
even if we don't even have to fight that battle. All we have to do is say that with the facts at hand, you can't convict BBM. And he has never been convicted except for that that what do you call that? It's a pseudo conviction of tax failure to fill a tax
Non-declaration of
return.
income tax return. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
non-filing. So,
Yeah.
yan. So, again, what I advocate here is balance. You know, and to choose our battles. You don't have to fight the martial law was good, there were nobody killed, and the Marcoses aren't corrupt. You have to don't get baited into that. That's what they're trying to do. They're
Yeah.
baiting you into that. Don't have to argue. You can actually say sure and walk away because it isn't BBM. The only thing they can say, magnanakaw. O sige, if it's Ferdinand Senior, knock yourself out. Shout magnanakaw for all we care.
Mm-hmm.
You can't
Mm-hmm.
pin
Mm-hmm.
that on BBM. And the
Yes.
fact that they failed is what drives the popularity of BBM. That's the only thing that we have to emphasize. You had 30 freaking years. You had 30 years, you didn't find out who killed Ninoy. You didn't. Yeah. You didn't. Hell, you couldn't get the trains running, much less
I
ride them.
know. Yun lang,
You
ganun
reversed the
kasimpleng
game.
MRT.
You
Yeah,
reversed
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
we're talking also about the PNR. It was virtually drunk when President Duterte came.
Mm-hmm.
Diba?
Mm-hmm.
All we have to do is highlight their failings. Really? Mas gusto, the fact that you've sold this narrative, kahit nga, ako gusto ko na sabihin, sige na nga, magnanakaw na, but we'll still vote for him over whoever it is that you want to foist on us because you don't really have a very good track record. And this
Exactly.
person that you're trying to foist on us, can't string two sentences together without stumbling. I'll take this one. Siraan nyo
Yeah.
na nung sisiraan ninyo. You're not changing my mind or my vote. That's
Exactly.
it. You don't
Exactly.
have to jump through hoops to try to to change what they think. Accept everything. Sure, still gonna
Mhm.
vote for him. I don't care. Why
Exactly.
waste my
Exactly.
energy?
Yeah, yeah.
Balance.
Attorney Balance. Attorney, maraming salamat for this very
You're
wow.
welcome. It's
I'm
always fun.
overwhelmed with everything that we have talked about, and of course, like what our viewers are getting from this, they're very happy. They're very what do you call it?
I'm so glad
Satisfied.
that they listened. I
Yeah,
thank them for their patience. Ang
yeah.
tagal natin na.
Ang tagal
Kasi
natin, Tony. We are
namin.
running 2:48. But that is a good. That was
Sorry.
good. That was good. And everybody's still there. Still here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry for
attorney, on
talking on
behalf
and on.
of my team, Mac, Emil, and Lilibeth, thank you very much. Thank you very much
You're welcome.
for your
It's always
precious
fun to
time.
be on this show.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
attorney. Thank you.
Thank you so
On
much
that
for
note,
asking me
magpahinga ka na,
here.
attorney, and
May
God bless
karambol na
you.
po bukas.
Oo nga,
Thank you.
God bless you, attorney. God bless you. Thank you so much. And there you have it. Ang sinasabi nga ni attorney sa atin when they're trying to manipulate the narrative is baka marami rin ang madala na narrative nila at tayong mga boboto para kay BBM sabihin na naluto na, kagaya nung nagtanong kanina, naluto na ba, luto na ba ang botohan? Tapos hindi na lang tayo boboto and that can work against us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to continue, once again, I say this all the time, what President Duterte has started. And we have to take it farther. Uulit-ulitin ko yan. Dalhin natin ang bayan sa kung saan tayo dapat pumunta at walang narrative na ikikreate ang kabila na magdi-discourage sa atin ng ating. This is our mission. Mission natin itong lahat. Tayong naniniwala sa dapat na pagbabago na meron tayo. Let's get there together. Let's do our jobs. Let's vote solidly for the unity team. Bongbong Marcos and Inday Sara Duterte. Hindi ko na ito hahabaan dahil iisa lang ang ating bayan na dapat nating alagaan. Kaya't bago ang ano paman, bago ang sarili, bumoto tayo. Solid unity team. Dahil lagi nating iisipin, sa boto na yan, ang inuna natin, Pilipinas muna. Magandang gabi po and please do like, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe and share and like and comment. It's 3 p.m. Pilipinas Muna and our Facebook page, 3 p.m. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, Pilipinas Muna. Sa pagboto natin, tandaan natin ang ating aalagaan, Pilipinas Muna. Magandang gabi po at maraming salamat sa inyo.